Afterwards. Hello, good morning. Welcome back. If you're just arriving, welcome to the Work It Podcast Festival. My name is Dessa. I'm your main stage host for today. Also, just to start clean, I'm the person who dropped the almond milk in the lobby. Some quick housekeeping before we get started. If at any point today you need a hand or you've got a question about something, that main info desk, it's in the lobby, it's like festooned with lights. There will always be somebody there if you have a question, or if you need directions, or you need some special assistance, so just holler at them. Also, I want to thank our main funders for this gig. Thank you so much for the major funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Also, sponsorship for Work It is provided by Luminary, Spotify, Spreaker, Acast, Himalaya, and the Women's Foundation of California. For any of you who were at the Work It Second Home podcast boot camp on Wednesday, that program was made possible for free thanks to the Annenberg Foundation. Also, thanks to the media partners, the Los Angeles Times and KCRW. And if you made it to the opening night mixer across the street, thank you so much to both Angel City Brewing and West Elm for making that dream a reality. I thought that it was a speakeasy and that I might have to open a couch and find out where the party was, but it was awesome. Also, just a note about our second stage. That kicks off at 10 a.m. today in Segovia Hall, which is on the second floor next door at the Ace Hotel. And today, we'll have podcast teams taking you behind the scenes of their work. The first show that'll be chatting with you is Death, Sex, and Money, followed by The Man in the Window and 70 Million. Oh my gosh, but right now, today, to kick off day 2, on this stage, it is my pleasure to introduce Paula Szuchman. Paula is the Vice President of New Shows Development at WNYC Studios, where she's worked on such shows as Two Dope Queens, so many white guys, Nancy, Late Night Whenever, 10 Things That Scare Me, American Fiasco, and many more. She's here to interview the one and only Lisa Hanawalt. She's the woman behind Tuca Bertie, BoJack Horseman, Coyote, Doggirl, and Hot Dog Taste Test. Please help me welcome both to stage.
Lisa just said, go out now. I was like, okay, thank you. Thank you for organizing this.
It is time.
Lisa. Well, welcome, everybody. No, it's not good? Okay. We were just in the green room talking about how not nervous we are.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Very comfortable for me. This is why I became a cartoonist.
Right. Exactly. So you could
talk in front of a lot of people.
Not ever talk to people. Oops.
It's going great.
Well, I did just have a giant egg burrito with cheese,
which is
and
a
hot
bonkers
sauce.
choice for breakfast before going on stage.
Lisa's
I would
like,
never.
I haven't eaten anything.
I respect it. No, I had some gluten-free toast.
Okay.
Played it safe.
Okay, this is gonna go well for you.
We'll see.
Okay, so welcome everybody to Friday morning at Work It. I've got my notes on my hotel card here, and I am with Lisa Hanawalt, who, as Dessa just told everybody, is an artist and writer in Los Angeles, the creator of Tuca and Bertie, one of my favorite TV shows, and many other millions of people's favorite TV shows, production designer and producer of BoJack Horseman, author of Coyote, Doggirl, Hot Dog Taste Test, and many others. And the other one is My Dirty Dumb Eyes.
That's right.
Which is right next to my bed right now at home. You are the co-host of a podcast called Baby Geniuses with comedian Emily Heller on the Maximum Fun Network. You live in Los Angeles, near Los Globos.
That's right. Sort of close to Los Globos.
Sort of close to Los Globos. So welcome. I love your work. One of the reasons I love your work so much is because you, and we talked about this earlier, you are more of a rule breaker than most people I know. And when I'm watching your show, I think it's going in a certain direction, and I think there are certain rules for what's happening, and then something totally different happens. So we will get to that. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to start with, because this is a women's podcasting conference, I wanted to start with clothes. So Specifically, something that you wore to the Emmys.
Oh, yes. This was made by my friend Lacey, who is the creator of Big Bud Press, which is an amazing clothing company. And she's just someone that I met in New York years and years ago, but back before she made clothes. And then suddenly she started this company, and now it's like this huge thing. You see their rainbow-colored jumpsuits everywhere. And I designed this pattern of these plant ladies, and then she was just like, do you want me to make you an outfit? I can make you an outfit. And she just like whipped it up.
Yeah,
She's incredible.
You're one of the few people I know who really combine your work and your clothes so well.
Thank you.
Have you worn this outfit since?
No, it was kind of made last minute, so it's a little like it was screen printed very quickly. But I think we're gonna make more of them.
Ooh. So for those of you who don't know, the character featured on this suit is Draca.
Yeah,
right?
None of them are specifically Draca, but they are her cousins.
They are her cousins.
Yes.
And Draca is
She's a plant woman. She's like a Dracaena plant specifically, I think.
Dracaena plant?
Yeah.
What are the characteristics of a Dracaena plant?
I don't really know.
Okay.
I have one. It's dying.
I actually have a little outtake of Draca from Tuca and Bertie. You can see it right there on the confidence monitor. So again, going back to the fact that Tuca and Bertie kind of goes in unexpectedly bizarre directions. The show itself, for those of you who don't know, is about two 30-something birds. Tuca, played by Tiffany Haddish, and Bertie, played by Ali Wong. In some respects, Bertie is like, you know, neurotic, anxious, shy, has big ambitions, but is too scared to, you know, follow them sometimes. And Tuca is adventurous and confident and a hot mess. And of course, their actual personalities are, you know, more nuanced and complex. But I think, at least for me, watching the show definitely feels, I'm gonna get rid of topless Draca for a second. To me, feels like, you know, very easy to identify with both and very easy to identify with their friendship.
I will say all the writers in the writer's room were birdies.
They were all birdies.
Yeah.
So talk about that. What do you mean by that?
Oh, I just mean like during their interviews, they were all like, I'm a birdie. Which I thought was really interesting.
I'm a Bertie and a Tuca.
Yeah.
What are you?
I'm strongly both.
You're strongly both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely, like, I do things a lot where my boyfriend is like, you are such a Tuca right now. So I'm just like a little bit impulsive and selfish and loud sometimes, but that doesn't always come out in public.
It will in a few minutes. And is he a speckle? Speckle is
He's
Bertie's.
a speckle, yes.
How do you describe a speckle?
Just like a good, solid dude. It's funny, like a lot of people watch the first episode and they're like, I thought that Speckle was gonna turn out to be this like toxic boyfriend character, and then he never really went that way. He's just like, he's good. And I'm like, yeah, there are some good men out there. And it's funny, like I didn't expect that reaction. People hadn't quite seen that in TV for a long time.
That kind of bird?
Yeah, that specific kind of bird.
Does anybody, I don't know who's watched Tuca Bertie, but are there show of hands for, who's a Tuca? Shout if you're a Tuca.
I love her.
Okay, shout mildly if you're a Bertie. And what if you're a speckle? No speckles. I definitely want a speckle in my life.
Speckles are good.
But it's
They're
interesting
solid.
because
they're not flawless. No, that's like important because no one is. But
no, but you're right. When you watch that show, I mean, the thing again with like you'd never know really what to expect. I was one of those people who was like speckle.
Yeah,
like, this guy's not gonna last.
He's a dork. She should dump him.
He's too fawning, you know.
Yeah.
And then he turns out to be wonderful.
He's pretty good.
Yeah. One of the things in my vast research that I did for this was looking at a New York Times article by Amanda Hess, and she said something that I loved, which is, the animalism of Hanawalt's work helps reveal parts of women we rarely see on screen, the strangest, horniest, hungriest parts. And you actually said in that interview that it was very important to me to show that women are gross. So, as we were discussing with my burrito this morning. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, again, where does this show come from? Why do the women in it have to be gross, strange, horny, et cetera? Why is that important to you?
I think it's just about breaking down some barriers of what is expected of women versus men, and how men are just historically able to move more freely through society, just doing what they do, and women have to like keep everything tight and like look perfect and not fart and not burp and like, I don't know, just kind of clearing that away and just showing how we are actually, and showing how horny and stupid we are. It's just really important to me.
That's your feminist mission.
Mm-hmm. We're horny idiots.
Well, I have a question. So, you created BoJack in terms of like actually BoJack's head, face, like
the look of all the characters came from me.
Right.
And the backgrounds and such.
And when you were going out to make your own show, what were some of the things that you wanted to sort of undo or reverse or evolve from the BoJack world? It's
interesting because I never thought I wanted my own TV show. That's not been one of my benchmarks. But working on BoJack for 5 years, I definitely, although I love the show so much and I love Raphael and I love working on it, there were definitely frustrations I had with it where I was like, every time, we see like a Diane or Princess Carolyn story, I just want to stay with them longer.
Right.
I just want to like explore that. And I'm less interested in some of the other characters. And that world is also, it's funny because even though there's like animal people, I feel like it's actually a very structured world where things are very realistic. So I wanted to break that up a little bit and, loosen up the animation. And now I'm just like getting into process. But there's just a lot of things I wanted to do differently.
Okay, so this is going to be a good segue for me when you talk about doing things differently. I have a video, just a short clip from one of my favorite scenes in Tuca and Bertie, which is, I think they're in a supermarket, and it's the sex bugs. Mm-hmm. So some of you might know them as, I don't know, crabs? Is that?
No, they're just sex bugs.
Sex bugs.
Yeah.
But some of you might have had sex bugs, but you might not have envisioned them in the way that Lisa has envisioned sex bugs. So could we have that video, please?
Good day, everyone. I'm Ebony Black of the CSBC, and this is my partner and adult daughter, Sophie. She recently flunked out of business school, so now she's working for me.
You can just introduce me as Sophie.
We're just going to do a routine extermination, and then we'll have you find folks on your way.
Extermination? You can't just kill them? There hasn't even been a trial.
A trial? This is a standard procedure.
There's nothing standard about the killing of innocent creatures who just want a party. I demand a trial, and Bertie will be my counsel.
What?
Ma'am, are these your sex bugs?
Yes, we will not be shamed. Damn, you all shamed me.
Tuca? I'm not...
You assholes want to be on the jury? Absolutely not. All right. Although this is highly unorthodox, I'm going to allow this because the traffic heading back to the CSBC headquarters is murderous this time of day, and I just cannot.
Cool.
That was Laverne Cox.
I was going to ask you who that was. Uh-huh. I love the sex bugs because they're so, I guess this is a bad thing to say, but they're very human.
Yeah.
The fact that you can feel empathy for a sex bug. Tell me about that episode. Tell me about where the sex bugs came from, not literally, but in your imagination.
What's interesting is that was actually the first episode I wrote back when we first pitched to Netflix, and they were like, okay, write us a script, and then we'll see if we want to buy it or not. I wrote the sex bugs episode more or less. Like, it's definitely changed a lot, and Rochelle Williams actually took over and wrote the episode. But it was a version of that, and then they were like, this is great, but this doesn't seem like a first episode, so can you write another one? So then I wrote what ended up being the first episode and moved this to episode 4. Sorry, it's boring. And then they ordered the show. But something about this episode, sex bugs were just something I came up with. They're in my mini comics from like over 10 years ago. Me and Raphael made up a song about them.
Can you sing it?
It was like, we know that we disgust you with our inside-outside hugs. We're the sex bugs. It's just like...
Thank you for humoring me.
You're welcome. And I just wanted to show that Bertie has anxiety, and it's not for any particular reason. She just has a panic attack in a grocery store. And it was very funny, like, pitching that, because all the male execs I pitched it to were just like, yeah, but why does she have anxiety? I was like, there is no reason. She just has it. And they're like, but what causes it? Like, you don't empathize with this at all, do you? It's never. It was very hard to explain. Yeah. I like sang that song that she sings in the grocery store, like
Oh yeah,
at all the pitches.
that song is really good. Can you sing that song?
Oh,
It's
that where she's like, I'm losing my shit for no reason, like that. Yeah,
that's right. That happened. That's the same episode. I'm losing my shit. Oh God. That's gonna be a good mantra. The for no reason part, I think, is very soothing.
yeah.
There doesn't have to be a reason.
I think maybe we changed it so she says for so many reasons, and then all the other people are like for no reason. They're like no.
So that sounds very scary to go and pitch your show that involves sex bugs and birds who masturbate and stuff like that to a
Yeah.
room full of TV executives. Can you tell me about that? Like, how does that work? There's a lot of people in this room who, have work of their own that they are, either out there making right now or planning on making or thinking about making or wanting to take it bigger or wanting to take it smaller. So I think there's a lot of people who can, who are sort of in our place of like having this thing that we want to do, but
Yeah,
then
I
before we
hate
do
pitching.
it, we got to pitch it.
I hate pitching. I hate proposals. I hate any kind of thing where you have to like explain what the thing is. I'm always like, just give me the money and let me make it, and then I'll show
Trust
you.
me.
I'll
Yeah.
show you how good it is. Like I can't explain it, but like you need to. So I think it's just a matter of like practicing it a lot. I practice the pitch a lot.
Which is like 3 people in suits behind a table.
Oh my
literally.
God. I mean, at one point when I was like pitching out the first season, it was like a room with like 20 people, like just a long table with like all kinds of people. It was terrifying.
Did you
And I had
stand
to,
or
like,
sit?
I was sitting and I had to like explain the part where like Bertie jerks off in the bathroom and everyone was just like, "Ah!" And I was like, should I go or can I finish the rest of the season? Yeah, it's just practicing it and just going in there and just knowing the whole time that it's gonna feel like you have food poisoning, but it's fine. You just I like had pitch meetings where I just had like horrible dry mouth the entire time, and I was like, I cannot stop to get a sip of water because I'm gonna look like Marco Rubio. You know what I mean? Where
Yes,
he's just
I
like,
do.
"Ugh," like I just can't. I gotta push through and hope that they don't notice. And
that guy.
you're, it's like 5 p.m. on a Friday, and you're just looking into these execs' eyes, just totally dead-eyed, so bored by everything you're saying, and you're like, well.
Are they doing it at 5 p.m. on a Friday to fuck with you?
Maybe, I don't know. I think that's just when the meeting was planned and you're like, fuck, okay, well, I hope I don't completely bore them.
So then you got your own show.
I did.
Which is huge, especially, period, huge.
I'm
But
amazed that happened.
I am not amazed because I think you're wonderful, but it's also, from what I understand, all industries are pretty male dominated, but the adult animation industry is like, I got somewhere on my cards, I got a stat, I don't know, that a few years ago, Splitsider ran a piece saying that 47 creators listed for late night comedy giant Adult Swim's current roster of shows, none were women.
Yeah, this was, it was like the first place my mind went to when the show was canceled, was I just was like, I couldn't even crack getting past one season. It's just so hard. I don't know why it's so hard.
Is there something about this thing? Is it like...
I have so many theories that I can't fully get into. It's just, at this moment, it's really hard.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop trying. But,
Yeah.
And there's a lot more women-created shows coming out now, which is nice. A lot that are, down the pipeline. I think Bless the Hearts just came out on Fox, and that's a woman-created show. And
There's the animated one on Amazon, too? Is it Raphael?
Undone?
Yeah.
Yeah, by Kate Purdy and Raphael Waxberg, who also created BoJack. It's incredible. Yeah, that show is beautiful. It's entirely rotoscoped, and the backgrounds are literal oil paintings. It's fantastic. So there's a lot more women making animated shows right now. I think it's a really good time, and things are changing. But yes, historically, it's been mostly male.
Yeah, and I don't know, in my mind, I'm like, is that because, dudes are the ones who are, playing video games in their basement early on, and, I don't know.
Well, when all the shows are made by men about men, then that's what the audience is going to be. So then when you make a female show, you have to then bring more women to watch something that they're not used to being for them. I think that's part of the difficulty as well.
Right, and also
And
women
then men
are,
watch it and they're like, this isn't for me. I don't
Right.
like it. That means it's for nobody.
because there's women masturbating, and they're actually cartoons of birds, so that's not the same as porn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of barriers.
Also, women aren't funny. That's
They
another
aren't,
thing.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Christopher Hitchens
It definitely
cleared that up for everyone.
It's a drawback when you're a woman that you're not funny. So I don't want to harp on when Netflix canceled the show, but I want to talk about it. We're not going to harp. I just want to talk about it in the sense of when there's a flying insect up here.
You're a moth. You're a flame. You're a flame it's drawn to.
In the sense of people this kind of shit happens, and it's unfair, and it's anger inducing when it's your own thing. And I guess I just think also it's helpful, I think, for this particular audience to understand what was your process like after is this because I'm talking to someone who works with animal cartoons? What was the journey after that? And I know, I heard
After the show was canceled?
Well, I heard your podcast episode talking to Emily about it, and there was, a page went up immediately to save Tuca and Bertie, and there was this huge
Which has been
outpouring.
so nice. I really appreciate everyone who has tweeted about it and signed the petition and stuff. It definitely helps. It's nice to. It was hard because I found out a month before I was able to say anything publicly, and that was the most difficult because I was just alone with it, and I thought nobody would care. I just thought people would be like, well, it was bad, so. But the fact that people were like, this is a huge fuck up, this is a mistake, it just felt good. I wasn't alone with that anymore. It was surprisingly emotional and personal. I just, I wish I could be like, well, that's just one project. I have a lot, which I do, but I put a lot of heart into everything I make, and so when they don't, succeed, then it feels very personal.
Does it give you, when you think about your next project, do you think about it differently in any way?
I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm interested in. I can't really, when you're about to make something, you can't really think about whether it's gonna pass or fail, or who's gonna like it, who's gonna care. You just have to kind of keep going back to your own North Star of what you're really interested in,
right.
and what turns you on, and just go forth.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
We had also talked about you also feeling drawn towards things that make you uncomfortable, and obviously this is an uncomfortable, potentially part of your life right now, but so was pitching your own show, and so was running your own show, and we had talked about how
I didn't think I could do it. The whole time I did it, I was like, I'm gonna fall apart. There's no way I can do this.
Right.
So having gone through it, I think that was really empowering.
What was it like to be a boss?
It's hard. I'm not used to I don't really like being hierarchical. It makes me a little uncomfortable, even though it kind of has to be that way in order for things to run smoothly. I don't know, it's just hard to sit in a room with 15 people all looking at you and being like, so what do you think? And I'm like, I cannot make up my mind about this right now. I have to go into my own little room and sit and think about things. I'm a slow processor. Whereas some people are more extroverted and can, think on the spot and I don't know. I had to learn to kind of step into that role a lot of times and sort of just pretend okay, I can pretend to direct voice actors. Even though I don't
So
know
you
what
had
I'm
never
doing.
directed voice actors?
No.
So how did you do it?
Well, Raphael sat with me a lot and kind of coaxed me through it and taught me what he learned from working on BoJack. That was what was most helpful, is having so much of the same team from
Right.
BoJack. So I've known these people for 5 years, and they're all there to support me. You can't do things like that alone. You need people to that you can look to and be like, am I being insane right now? And they'll be like, no, or yes, you're being crazy. You just need those people.
Right. I think asking for help is something that is a really good quality, and not.
I've had to learn that. I'm really bad at it.
You are?
Yeah, I like to just kind of handle everything myself. I don't like to be a burden to anyone.
Right.
I don't like to show weakness. That's a big thing, especially, as a female boss, you don't want to be I don't know, I'm always worried I'll seem too emotional, I'll seem sick, or I'll just seem incompetent. That's a huge fear of mine. But yeah, sometimes you're just exhausted.
I like to lean on I don't know what I'm doing, but here's what I think you should do.
I do that a lot.
And it's like a tick, and I actually did have a boss who said, you have to stop a male boss who said, can you stop saying you don't know what you're doing? I'm
The
like,
thing is, like,
I
people
don't-
say, like, oh, you should stop being like that and you should be more like, you know, a typical boss. But I think the opposite is true. I think more people in general should be like, yeah, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but it's fine.
Right, I should have told him he
Like-
should apologize for himself more.
Yeah. I think it's okay to apologize a lot, and it's okay to ask questions. And like, I don't know, there was like one part where a director, Aaron Long, he's directing episode 6, and he was like, the beginning of this script, I just don't really understand what you were going for. And I was like, yeah, you know what? This is bad. I wrote a bad opening scene. If you want to throw this out and make something different, go for it. So he made this like crazy thing where like Tuca like spits out gum and then a guy stomps on gum and like does it to a beat. Like it's crazy. And it makes me laugh so hard every time I see it. And that just totally came from his brain. So
Right, and also the fact that you are the kind of boss who he felt comfortable saying, like, I'm not, like, help me, like, I want to make this better. Is it
Yeah.
okay if I make this better? You
yeah.
know?
I wanted everyone to like bring their own creativity to the project, and it made it so much stronger, I think.
I also wonder, like, now that I'm thinking about it, not that this is my therapy session, but like, maybe it's like, it's not that I'm apologizing because I'm like, you know, like it's a tick, but I actually am not sure. I'm just
Yeah.
verbalizing it.
Sometimes I'm
Not
not
to say I don't-
sure, and like sometimes, I don't know, I just like want everyone to feel comfortable,
Right.
like saying what's on their mind within reason. Like, you know, I mean, if someone's like, wow, you made a bad choice with that, you know, voice actor, I don't want them to say so. Like, just let it go. But yeah, I want everyone to be able to speak up and like pitch jokes or whatever.
So when you say directing voice acting, because I'm in the podcasting business, I'm not so in the visual world, you've got Ali Wong and Tiffany Haddish in a room, like playing your characters, and you're supposed to direct them.
Yeah.
So how did that go the first day?
I don't even remember. I think I blacked out.
Like, are you
They're
like,
both very
can you say that line, Ali, like a little bit more somberly?
Yeah, I mean, and they're both really different. And like, I mean, they're both incredibly good at it. I mean, Tiffany just came in and would just like, she'll just give me 3 line readings in 3 completely different ways, which is difficult. Usually when someone says a line reading one way, they're gonna stick to that way and say it over and over again. They'll be like, I love you, I love you. And you're like, can you be like more aggressive? And Tiffany would just do it 3 completely different ways. And then Ali was just such a good actress. Like, I was really surprised by her range because I'd only known her like stand-up. And we just auditioned her for Bertie. We cast Tiffany very early on, and then we spent a while trying to find the right Bertie to like balance her out. And yeah, Ali just really blew it away.
They have a really, really wonderful rapport together.
They do, and they know each other from stand-up. So
Okay.
they would like, whenever they came in together, they would gossip, and it was cute.
And did you know, so you said you cast Tiffany right away. Did you have her in mind when you were?
Yes. Well, no, I saw Girls Trip and I went, that's a Tuca. So that's the first person we're gonna ask. And then I read an article and it said, oh, her agent, Joel Zadak. And I was like, I know Joel. He's Raphael's agent. He's my boyfriend's agent. So easy. So then we were able to get her a script and she read it on her flight to Africa and she really connected with it. And then, yeah. And then she emailed and said she liked it. And I cried.
Did you cry?
I did cry.
That's awesome. And I mean, their friendship, again, it's interesting because you said they're friends in real life, and their friendship is really profound on the show. And one thing I want to talk about, just in like, where does the friendship part come in? Have you had friendships like that you've channeled? Have
I
you
think
had?
that was the hardest part of writing the show and pitching it in a way, is that I kept worrying that I'm not a good enough female friend to make a show about female friendship. And I've talked to other women who feel the same way, and I was like, what are you talking about? You're the best female friend. Like, what? I think we just see these portrayals of women as like having slumber parties and like calling each other on the phone 5 times a day and having that kind of relationship, and I don't really have that. Like, I have a lot of different friends. You know, I have like Emily Heller is one of my best friends, but you know, she's like, we podcast together, and that's the majority of what we're doing. Like, sometimes we'll go see a movie, but like usually we're just podcasting, and that's our chance to catch up with each other. I have other friends I like go out to dinner with, you know, I mean, I have horse friends, like, and I think it's okay to not have like one person who's your main
Right.
But then, of course, I made a show where they do kind of have like a relationship.
I don't think there are any other friends. Do they have other friends on that show?
No, and I think it's kind of bad. Like their relationship is a little bit, what's that word?
Codependent?
Yes, a little codependent, and it starts to like, the pressure starts to mount, and it kind of, it's, when you've been friends with one person for that long and you're both kind of moving in different directions, how are you gonna like, should you stay friends or not? Or like, how is that gonna change?
Right. And in that way, I think there's a way that I look at them as one person, sort of two sides of the brain.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, well, I wrote them both, so that definitely they both came
Yeah.
from me.
It's not about friendship, it's about you.
Oh no, I made a show about myself.
Oh, no. I wanted to talk about, again, the reason that I was so struck by Tuca and Bertie and wanted to get you on the stage was because, I'm in a business, and a lot of us are in a business where there's models of how we make shows. So, I'm working on something right now, and, someone will be like, oh, we should do it. You know how Heavyweight does it? Why don't we do it like that Heavyweight does it, or Mystery Show or something? We have these sort of things we go to, these iconic or recently iconic podcasts or templates, or, oh, that sounds like too much like this, and I want it to sound more like that. And, as an artist, you always have these references. Like, that's just what, that's part of being an artist, and I think that's really helpful, but I think it can be really disruptive as well when you're like, but I want to make something totally original.
Yeah.
And I keep, like, saying, let's make it like this or like that, let's do the credits like Heavyweight, or let's do the flashback scene like this other show. So, I don't know why I keep saying Heavyweight. And watching your show, I was like, okay, so now I'm like, let's make it more like Tuca and Bertie. But in terms of how things just veer off. And so we talk about like universe building, and then we create this universe and everything works well within that universe. But I really, really am motivated by the way you just sort of break form. And one of the clips I wanted to play, as soon as I saw it, I was like, what is happening? And it's, it's not in the category of like women are gross. It's so viscerally, formatically kind of different. So this is the one, this is the video, I think it's called Memories. Can you play that one?
Wow, look at all these memories.
The only thing that hasn't changed is the size of your schnoz.
True. I was one big beak baby. Oh.
Hey, is that your mom?
You look just like her. Yeah. My mom raised all of us kids by herself. So many good memories there.
Good. The heat was on and off. You kids were barefoot most of the time. The 5 of you running around barely supervised. It's a wonder any of you survived at all.
It's true. We didn't have a lot of money, but my mom was crafty and took good care of us. We all loved each other. It all kind of fell apart after she died.
I'm so sorry.
Such a tragedy. So young, so many questionable decisions. Luckily for Tuca, her dim bulb of a brain was bright enough to stick close to Auntie Tallulah.
Yeah, okay, Auntie. Let's rein it in. Maybe we should switch to beer.
Huh? Oh. Bernard, bring us the beer-teenies!
So I should say that's Tuca and her Aunt Tallulah, who...
Played by Jennifer Lewis.
Jennifer Lewis. Oh, God, that's good to know. Yeah, Aunt Tallulah is... I don't know, how do you describe Aunt Tallulah?
She's a souse, is that what you say? She drinks too much, and she gets kind of mean.
Yeah.
A little abusive.
Yeah.
Verbally.
Yeah. But she sort of gives Tuca money to pay her rent.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of an issue.
Yeah. It's
And
one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, why is that?
It just feels very emotional to me, and like, I like I like Bertie's story in it, where she like goes to this empowerment meeting and like learns to empower herself, but then she gets into a different context where it doesn't work and she doesn't know how to empower herself, and then the wires get crossed and like, yeah.
Yeah, and meanwhile,
complicated.
Tuca is visiting her aunt and, reminiscing about her childhood, and you get this sort of insight into who Tuca is a little bit, because she presents as just like, like I'm cool, I don't care about anything, and then all of a sudden it switches from animation to what? What is that? What is that that's suddenly not animated?
That was stop motion with like popsicle sticks and yarn, and then some of that was done digitally. Like the characters were animated digitally, but they look handmade, and yeah, that was director Amy Winfrey pitched that, and I loved it.
She said, let's just bring in some popsicle sticks and yarn.
Yeah, she was just like, I want to make like a tree out of yarn, and then and I was like, yeah, that sounds fantastic. Definitely do that.
That happens a couple times in the show, and
there's like puppets in episode 4 that are really fun.
Yeah, there are puppets.
Yeah, Alison Dubois, the art director, made the puppets, and she made like a toilet that looked like a bush with like little leaves. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I really, really admire that. And in a similar vein, I was talking to one of our sound designers who's a real fan of the show, and he was talking about the way that you work with music and the way that the sort of dialogue sort of fades up and out of the music, and it seems to extend it. How were you involved in the music, and how were you thinking about it? Because if you haven't watched the show, the music is amazing.
Yeah, the music is done by, we have our music supervisor, Andy Gowan, who got us some songs licensed, but then most of the music was made by Jesse Novak, who's a composer. And it would just be like, I want this kind of feel for this scene, and he would just make something. He's incredible. And then for a lot of the songs, like I wrote the songs, and I would just like record myself singing, and then I would send him the recording, and he would make it into a song and send it back. And then he would come in, and we would like coach the actors through singing, which is fun. Like we worked with a lot of actors who hadn't really done singing before, and yeah, it was just so much fun. I am not a musician, but I like to pretend I am and like make up songs all the time. So it was just a fun opportunity to indulge that.
Were you told as a child that you couldn't sing?
No, I was in choir and stuff, but I was
okay.
just never like a musician.
My parents told me that I couldn't sing.
That's
so
mean.
It totally ruined that part of my life. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, we sort of covered it already, but I really wanted to know what it's like to be in a writer's room, because I have a little bit of like a fantasy about the writer's room and how it must, like, we do it a bit where I am when we're working on scripting and we get into a room and we all work together. How did it work on Tuca and Bertie?
We had like maybe 8 writers, more or less, rotating in and out. So sometimes there would only be me and 2 other people in the room, and sometimes it'd be a full house, depending on who was out working on scripts. It was my first time in a writer's room.
And did you hire everybody?
I did.
And how did you, like, was it just like, I like you, or was it, I need to look for different kinds of writers?
We interviewed people, and I just went with my gut on like who seemed like they would know what they were doing, because I didn't. And then, I had people who I knew were good at jokes, people who I knew were good at structure and story, and like, I just chose people who I thought would get along too, because in the writer's room, you're in that room for like, 8 hours a day for 16 weeks. So if there's a bad egg in there who's like got kind of a toxic or, negative.
Did you have to fire anyone?
No.
Okay.
You really want the juice, don't you? She wants the juicy stuff. No, everyone was great. Everyone was very sweet. It was very supportive. We told a lot of really personal, vulnerable stories in there.
And did they end up in the show?
Yeah, a lot of things worked their way into the show. And I just wanted it to feel like a really safe space, because when you're in the writer's room, you have to like be able to share that kind of thing and just have like, grist for the mill, as it were. Yeah, it was hard, but it was fun.
And how did you have talked about and backstage and also in interviews like social anxiety? Do you feel like you reached different points in that, having to
It's funny how you can think of yourself a certain way and then you can just adapt to anything.
Right.
Like the first week, my whole neck was sore just from like turning to look at people and like nodding, and then like, because I'm just not used to that. I'm used to sitting alone in front of my computer, and I just felt exhausted by it. But then I just got used to it, and after a few weeks, it felt very comfortable to just be in a room with these people all day.
And did you have a feeling, again, that having watched BoJack and Tuca, it's not even, I don't even want to compare them, but I feel like Tuca and Bertie gets very dark very quickly sometimes for
Tuca
me.
and Bertie?
Yeah, like, again, somewhat unexpectedly, and, you know, as you get into like the penultimate episode at the Jelly Lakes when we learn about something that happened to Bertie in her past, and then of course we learn stuff about Tuca's past. It gets really hard, and like, how do you think? And you know, I work on some shows also where it's like the balance between comedy and tragedy and tears and laughter. Did you have a sense going into it what kind of balance you wanted?
Yeah, I just, I wanted it to have that tone. I think a lot of my work has that tone where things are a little bit somber and like sad stuff happens, but then ultimately it's a very positive, optimistic kind of feel. And I think that reflects my own personality.
Would you say it's laugh, laugh, cry, or laugh, cry?
I don't know. I don't have a specific pattern.
You
that
don't
I
have a
follow.
percentage?
It's all by gut feel. It's, you know, it's like you're working with a blob of clay, and just as you sculpt it, you kind of carve away the things you don't like, and you leave the stuff you love, and then you've got your
got
thing.
the thing.
Yeah, I don't think very formulaically. That's not a word.
Right.
About it. I don't have a formula.
You don't have a formula.
No. I'm not a mathematician, I'm an artist.
Okay, I'm not gonna have a formula either.
I dropped out of trigonometry.
Did you actually?
Yeah.
In
It
high
was
school?
too hard, and I was like, I don't care. I don't care about this. This is not what I want to spend my time doing. And the teacher was like, just stay. And I was like, no. And so I dropped down to like the remedial math class.
And that worked out better?
It was fine.
I took
I don't regret
trigonometry,
it.
but I was a very good test taker, so I did very well in trigonometry, but I
was
had
not.
no idea what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who cares?
I
I mean,
don't-
if you care, great.
Well, that's the problem in school.
You don't
They
have
make
to
you
care
do all
about
these
everything.
things that you actually don't need, and they say, well, it's good for your brain, and it's like, why is it good for your brain? Like, you don't actually need to know anything beyond simple multiplication facts,
it's good
if
to
that.
know the basics of like,
But that ends at multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction.
yeah, which I don't remember.
Right.
Like, don't ask me to do that.
Cosine and sine.
Don't.
Oh, what was I going to say? Oh, right. Speaking of things that I'm scared about. So, I want to get into horses.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into horses. Have some ginger tea.
Thank you.
And I'll talk for a second. So, you designed BoJack. If anybody follows you on Instagram, they might have seen a little essay you wrote in 6th grade where you say, people tease me and they call me horse poop. I don't remember the exact thing, but I'm wild about art and I want to be famous for drawing horses one day.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know how people can say they became famous for the thing that they said they wanted to become famous for in
That
6th
was
grade.
a strange little coincidence.
You think it's a coincidence?
Well, sort of. Not really.
Not really.
But like, yeah. It was fun to find that later. 'Cause
Yeah.
I don't remember writing it.
You just found it like in your parents' house?
Yeah.
Well, I think it was great. And so you've always loved horses. And now you own a horse. Is this the first horse that
Yeah.
you've had yourself?
I've had her almost a year now.
Almost a year. What's her name?
Juniper.
And how do you buy a horse?
I found her in a Facebook ad.
And what did the ad say? Horse for sale.
It said fancy horse. It called her fancy. And I was like, this horse looks perfect. So I texted my riding teacher and I was like, this is a silver dun fjord. That's like her color and her type of horse. This is not a drill. And she was like, do you want me to take a look? Like, are you serious? And I was like, maybe. And she went for a test ride and she was like, here's the news. She's perfect for you.
Okay, so again, as someone who's scared of horses.
I'm also scared of horses,
What do you,
but I ride them.
what, what part of horses are you scared of?
I'm afraid of falling and hurting myself.
Okay, me
and
too.
I'm afraid of being trampled. And
Me too.
Yeah, all the reasons
Like
why.
kicked from behind? Is it true you're not supposed to walk behind a horse?
I have been kicked. I got kicked in the ribs, and it cracked my ribs, and I had like a hoof print on my ribs for like a month.
Was that from Juniper?
No, she doesn't kick.
She doesn't
She's a
kick.
good girl. Yeah, that was a long time ago.
So when you're riding instructor rode the horse that she's perfect for you. How is a horse perfect? Like, how do you know that? Because I'm just
She's
experienced
safe,
with dogs.
but she's not boring. So like some horses,
Safe, but not
they're like
boring.
a beginner's horse where they'll just go where you point them, whatever. But she's got a little bit of, she's got a little spice. She's got opinions.
What kinds of opinions?
Like, I want to go home fast.
Which you can tell because she just starts to run the closer she
Yeah,
gets.
and I'm like, whoa. And then I try to stop her, and she's like, no.
What kinds of because, if anybody's read Coyote, Doggirl, I was talking to you about this before. I love Coyote, Doggirl. I think it's
you.
so funny
That's
and
my Western
so
graphic
emotional.
novel.
It's your Western graphic novel. You
Yeah.
want to say anything else about it? It's really, I don't know. I will say that it features a main character who is a Coyote dog girl.
Yeah.
Is that her proper name or her
Yeah, Coyote Dog Girl.
species?
She's like half coyote, half dog girl.
Right. She has a horse named Red. And at the beginning of the book, she's talking, well, they're having a conversation, except Red doesn't speak words, right?
Yeah.
And Coyote Dog Girl is talking to Red. And at the beginning, I'm like, wow, she must be so frustrated talking to this horse who never talks back to her. And then as I'm reading, I'm like, oh no, the horse is talking back to her, just not with words, because it feels like she's having a satisfying conversation, even though he's not saying anything. And
I wanted to capture that kind of aspect of being a horse girl. We were like, I love you, we're bonded, you're a wild creature who loves me, and this is very special. And the horse is just like, Like, I think horses are kind of largely ambivalent towards us.
so they're kind of like cats-ish?
No, they're their own thing. But like, my horse isn't like a dog. Like when she sees me, she's like, oh, it's you. Hello. She's not like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Thank God it's you. You're here.
So what do you get out of that? Like, what do you get out of a relationship
It's very
with a horse?
hard to describe. Just something about being with her just like makes everything else fall away, and it just like calms me down, and like it's just very it just engages all 5 senses, and I have to like I have to calm myself down, because if I'm scared, she'll be scared, and like I'm the pilot of the plane.
So is that part of it also? Is that the feeling of being nervous and then calming down?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. You have to, they kind of mirror your own behavior back at you. So if you come to the barn in like a bitchy, horrible state of mind, that will be reflected back at you immediately, and it's not going to go well. So you have to like let that stuff go.
Wow, that sounds like a reasonable replacement for therapy.
Yeah, I mean, I do both, but.
Okay, good. And how often do you go see her?
4 or 5 times a week, usually.
Oh, wow. Do you always ride her? Or when you have
Not
a horse, do you
always.
just can you also hang out?
Sometimes I just hang out.
Like brush her?
Sometimes I just brush her, take her for a walk. Yeah.
Oh. Well, it looks like when I look at it, it looks like a really good relationship on Instagram. I have another thing
It's
just
good.
in case no one has seen. Is that Juniper? Is that her?
Yes.
I think that is her, right? In
She is
all
a
the
potato.
pictures of you with her, you seem so calm and happy, and it makes me feel like I can get behind the horse thing, because I've always felt like I have some envy of when I was a kid of all the girls who were horse girls,
It is nice to like have one thing in my life that I am always gonna love and be obsessed with. It's like a driving force. Like, it is ridiculous, and I wish I didn't love them because they're dangerous, they're expensive, like it's an insane hobby. But it just makes me feel so self-actualized. I really like it.
And they live a long time, right?
Yeah.
How long do they live?
She's 13 now, and that's pretty young. Like, she might make it to 30 or so,
Wow,
hopefully.
that's a good thing too. I want to get to some audience questions, but I wanted to just also talk about your podcast for a second, because this
Yeah.
is a podcast conference.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked you when we were talking earlier about why did you decide to do a podcast, and you were like, my mother asked me the same thing.
Yeah.
This
My
is
mom
your-
was like, I don't see what you get out of this.
So it's called Baby Geniuses. You've been doing it for more than 7 years.
Yeah.
And talk to us about what the show is and what you do get out of it.
I started it because I started hanging out with Emily Heller, and on one of our first friend dates, she was like, oh, I used to have this show in San Francisco, and I miss it. And I was like, you should do a show again. And she's like, cool, do you want to co-host it with me? I was like, yes. And I didn't think it would actually happen, but
And wait, you didn't know each other that well when you
not that
started
well.
it.
It was like our 3rd time hanging out.
I did something similar where I met someone and I was like, do you want to write a book together? And we wrote a book together. And now
Isn't that fun to just take a leap of faith with someone? Because it could go really poorly.
Yeah, we
or it
basically
could
also
go
had a
great.
blind date. And
I
the
mean,
thing
same
is,
with like my partner Adam. Like we barely knew each other, and we went on a 2-week road trip together. Like it was just. And we've been together 10 years. But yeah, sometimes it's just fun to jump into it with someone. You just get a good vibe from them and you're like, yeah, okay.
and there's also less at stake if it doesn't go well. It's not like it's ending like a 10-year friendship.
Yeah, exactly. It was very low stakes. And through doing the podcast, we got to know each other better. And we still like surprise each other all the time. It's very fun. And we just, it's like loosely knowledge-based, so every week we read a different Wikipedia page. We used to have guests, and then that got too hard to just constantly book people, so we stopped.
I'd like to do that.
It's kind of like constantly evolving. We add new segments sometimes. Right now we have a segment called Chunch Chat, where we talk about Martha Stewart's pony, Ben Chunch.
Oh, I think that might be how do you pronounce it?
Well, it was Ben Chunch, and now it's Ban Chunch, and I don't know why she changed it. She changed the spelling. It's like one of the deep mysteries of Martha Stewart.
Have you ever had her on the show?
Martha Stewart? No.
Okay. I think she's bookable.
I don't know.
Anyone here ever booked Martha
I
Stewart?
have found it difficult.
All right, well, she's bookable. Do we have a clip of that to play, actually? Yes. Oh, can we
It's
play
time for Chunch Chat, our regular segment where we talk about any news in the world of Martha Stewart's pony, Ben Chunch.
When the clock strikes noon, we could have a picnic lunch, fine wine, full moon, and we're chatting about Chunch.
Is that your song?
I was just checking Martha Stewart's Instagram, and it is Labor Day, Monday currently, and she's on a Labor Day ride. This will be a couple weeks late when it comes out, but she is taking like a POV video of a whole big gaggle of ladies riding their ponies through a field. And she's just talking about, well, this is one of the benefits of living in Bedford, Connecticut, is that we can ride across the field. And it's just starting to rain. And the person in back is riding a little black horse, and I was wondering if it was Ben Chunch. She kind of pans the camera away and doesn't mention them, so maybe it's not. But I just, I'm curious to know if this is one of Martha's ponies. Kind of looks like it.
Oh man, she's just really trolling you now.
I know. Well, also his penis is out, so maybe she kind of pans the camera away.
And it's like, ooh.
Just as the dick comes out, so I think maybe she didn't want to mention it.
Is it, you have a girl horse?
Yeah.
Is that part of the decision of, I'm back at horses?
Whether or not
for a
I got to
second.
see that dick?
No, is it like, is there something, did you have
I don't know.
you have a preference?
I like mares because they're moody, which I relate to. And I feel like they're more complicated, but they're loyal and they have strong opinions. I don't know, they're just a little more complicated. Like if you want a less complicated horse, you get a gelding, which is like a castrated stallion. And they're kind of mellow, easygoing dudes.
A castrated stallion.
That's what most horses that you ride are.
Really?
Is geldings, yeah.
But the mares are more
They can
relatable.
be iffy.
Yeah.
They can have certain times a year where they're just because they're in heat or whatever.
Oh, wow. I just want to come full circle on the fashion. So you went ahead and you made, what, Ben Chunch? What is it? Is that like Welsh or something? What is that?
Because it's constantly, the spelling of it changed from Ben to Ban, so I just wanted to combine them.
Oh. So are these sweatshirts and shirts still for sale?
Yeah, they're on Threadless.
Okay, good.
Just, some merch for
I was going to
fans.
buy one, but I had a hard time picking the color, so I'm still
Yeah,
making a
there's
decision
too many
about that.
options.
There's a lot of options. Okay, so we have a little bit more time left, and I thought if anybody wants to ask a question, we can do some Q&A. I think there's a microphone up there.
Hi, my name is Ashley Ann. I make an arts and culture podcast in San Francisco at KQED.
Oh, great.
So super art nerd. I have a question about not podcasts. So in BoJack Horseman, there's this texture in the clothing and in the trees, and it's something that's not just a solid color, right? It's like a watercolor.
It's watercolor.
So there's, in your illustrations before the show, that was something that I felt like was already happening. So I'm wondering, because I've never seen it in other places, did you have to pitch let's do some texture, or let's play with how we're using color and background, just, Yeah, just using those kind of textures in watercolor. Like, did you have to fight for that? And like, what was
Good
that like?
question. That was actually pitched by Mike Hollingsworth, who's the supervising director, so he's in charge of like making everything animate and look good. And Raphael, the creator, were both like, how do we make this look more like Lisa's comics? Well, she does these watercolor paintings, so can we make this look like a watercolor painting? So I did all these like watercolor washes, and then later we used textures from other sources. But yeah, so like a texture on BoJack's fur is like my watercolor painting, and actually it was a real pain in the ass to do because we had to make these textures and then, you know, so you have to draw the thing and then color it and then have these textures in, and it made all the files enormous, and it makes it difficult to animate because when they change position, you know, the texture needs to track so that it's not jumping as they move, and oh my God. So I don't know if I would do it again, but it definitely it set the show apart a little bit in appearance from other animated shows. So I guess I don't regret it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Anyone else? Here's somebody.
Hey.
Hello.
I just wanted to ask, so like I work in podcasting, and oftentimes I get overwhelmed by the sheer number of podcasts out there in the world. I'm just like, oh God, like I can't listen to all of it. It suddenly all starts to sound the same to me. And I wonder, as someone who works across like many, many different forms of media, do you feel like you have to keep up with what other people are making in like comics and TV, like, and fashion? I guess this is like a multi-pronged question, I'm sorry, but like, do you feel like you have to keep up with what other people are making? Do you get overwhelmed and sick of it? And then what do you do when you feel overwhelmed and sick of like the water you're swimming in?
This is a fantastic question. This is what everyone who's creating anything has to struggle with. Yep. There's just so much out there. It's a real glut. Even just looking at Instagram, you're just bombarded by like beautiful images, and it just constantly feels like you're getting left behind, you're being left out, you're not keeping up, you're being replaced by someone who's like you but better than you. And I think you just need to have just enough of a taste of that to motivate you to keep up your game, you know, to challenge yourself. If your thing is like, I draw roses, well, maybe you gotta pivot and draw monkeys. I don't know. Like, you just have to, I mean, for me personally, I get bored easily, so I don't wanna do the same thing week after week anyways. You know, I could have just easily kept to drawing pet portraits or doing illustrated movie reviews. Like, those are two things I was known for, but I kind of just want to keep surprising myself. So yeah, just enough of that to motivate you to like be like, oh, that person's so good, I want to make something good. Like, I think that's a good thing. It's okay to feel a little bit competitive, but if that starts to get into a petty area where you're like, I hate them, they're my enemy, I must destroy them.
Then you should turn
it's
Instagram
like, no,
off.
They're your peer.
Right.
Like, they probably feel that same way about you. Maybe you can ask them questions. Maybe they can help you. Like, you can be like, hey, how did you get that? Like, do you have any advice for me? Like, you can always ask people for help. You can just know that you are providing your own value to things. It's about knowing in your heart that you are worthwhile, which is really difficult.
You should get a horse.
I mean, or a therapist.
Or both. I would also say that I find it really helpful to get out of the medium that I'm working in. So, you know, go to more museums, read books.
Going to museums is fantastic. I don't do it nearly enough.
No, I got here Tuesday. It's Friday. Wednesday. I'm still trying to go to a museum. I might go to a museum later. But, you know, putting yourself outside of the regular world that you're in is so important.
Don't just look at stuff on Instagram. Like, go for a hike and look at nature.
Yeah.
Let's go see what people were painting 300 years ago. Like, go on try to go out of town if you can. Everything is going to feed back into your own work. So just coming back to like who you are, what you care about, what makes you happy, and kind of you need to shut out all the noise of everything else. It's really difficult.
It's very hard.
It's hard. We all feel like we're drowning all the time. So,
good question. Read poetry. Next.
I have a question over here. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Heather. Hello. Thank you for this, first of all. Wonderful. You, Lisa, you continue to make groundbreak lots of firsts and are pioneering, to use, I don't know.
I suddenly feel like I'm going to cry.
I know. Well, seriously.
It's
super cool. And I think with that, and Paula, with what you do you feel like you got the support in the marketing and the the spice and all of that stuff that is needed for something like that is happening. You know, it's like Tiffany with, you know, They Ready and other, you know, we keep seeing these great things that come out, and we're like, are we getting enough oomph to get the word out? Do you feel supported? And how could we all who sit here and support more? Like, what's the bell ring that is like, do we need to tweet more? Do we need to complain more? It's like, why are you taking these things from us that we love? So I'm looking at, are you getting the support? And if not, how can we all rally and do that?
I mean, from the fans of my work and from the show, I feel so supported and buoyed, like incredibly so. Like, I feel cherished, which is all anyone can ever ask for in this world. Like, we all deserve to feel cherished. And I'm just excited, like, knowing that whatever I make next, there's gonna be people who are excited about it. So, like, as an artist, like, I'm so happy about that. Did I feel supported by the marketing from Netflix? Well, I'm not gonna talk about that today. Maybe later. Yeah, it's hard to get the word out about anything you're making and to like make people care about it.
Yeah.
When it needs to be cared about. It's really difficult.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us do a lot of that work ourselves. I mean, on social, we had talked about that on Instagram and et cetera. We do a lot of that work ourselves, and that can be very exhausting. It's like, I made this thing. Here's the thing I made. Here's the thing I made. Look, check out the thing I made. But what choice do we have sometimes?
For certain things I make, I'm just okay with it having a smaller audience. Like my podcast, like I never really worry about having more listeners. More is better, and I definitely could be better at promoting it. But for me, you know, I mean, my podcast is not my main thing. I almost see it as like a hobby, even though it does bring me income, and I want to keep doing it, and I want to keep growing it. I'm not worried about it growing exponentially. Like I know it has a limited audience, and that doesn't mean it's bad.
Right.
Some things just aren't going to be for everyone, and that's fine. Like that's intrinsically like what makes them good. So that's a little bit of a contradiction, but
no, I don't think that's contradictory at all. I think that's right.
you.
Some things
it's hard. Like as women too, we're kind of used to being like minimized and ghettoized and like being erased by history. So I think we constantly have this pressure to like not be forgotten, and we need a wide audience. And but like I don't know, it's okay to like. I mean, like, so many people don't know who Nicole Holofcener is, and I'm like, she is, like, one of the best directors. She has so many great movies, but, like, when I mentioned her, people were like, I don't know. But, oh, my God, she's incredible.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Go watch her stuff.
Please do.
We have time for one last question.
Hey.
Hi.
I really like your work. I came across the hot dog book in college, and it was wonderful and super grounding, and I always felt really comforted when I needed anything, so I read that. And I was curious about like what content, whether it's reading or like movies or whatever, that's grounding for you when you need it.
Oh, that's a great question. What is grounding for me when I need it? I have some comic books that I go back to over and over again, a lot of them made by friends of mine, like anything made by Jillian Tamaki or Eleanor Davis or Julia Wirtz, like is such a funny person, Kate Beaton. All of those just feel like, oh, this is my home. Like I love this stuff so much. I love reading books, like.
You said books?
I love books. I have this that library app, Libby, and I'm constantly like checking out books on there. This year I read Jenny Odell's How to Do Nothing, and it's like so surprising. It's not what you think it's gonna be, and it's just like, I think it just changed my life, that book. I love it. She writes about like bird watching and like just noticing things, and then she'll like reference some art piece and kind of tie it in, and it's like meandering, and it's just a really interesting way to write a book and see the world. It's great.
Yeah, doing nothing is actually a great thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to wrap it up. I want to say thank you so much for coming. In the category of other creative outlets and different things you can do, I did want to end on something that I had found that I loved that you did that I don't know if anybody knows about, but you did a music video.
Oh, yeah.
For Tegan and Sarah. And so again, it feels like the things you can do and the way your mind works is sort of limitless. And I want to end on that. I think we have like licensing issues, so it can only play like 20 seconds. So it'll be the last thing we hear. But I want to thank you again. And if there's anything else, you had mentioned something in backstage about this video and what it meant to you and
well,
what you
when I
thought
was
about
asked
it.
to make it, I did not know how to make a music video, but I just said yes because I just wanted to pretend I did. Because
Just say yes,
when Tegan and
guys.
Sarah ask you to do something, you don't say no because they're amazing. And it was really hard, and I had to like hire animators, and I composited the whole thing myself in After Effects, which I had to learn how to use. So there's a lot of little mistakes in there, but it was just a really fun project, and it was a good example of like, challenging myself, doing something that made me uncomfortable, but because I had a deadline and I was, trying to do a good job for these people I love, it made it possible. And yeah, I feel very personally connected to this video.
Oh, good. So I'm glad we're going to play it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Lisa,
Thanks, everyone.
for coming. Keep doing what you do. And here's Tegan, Sarah, and Lisa.
To the night, watching each day pass you. Hang on to your hope that the future's gonna break through. Hang on to yourself, lovers leave and then regret you. Hang on to your heart till you know they respect you. Hanging tonight, hanging tonight. I don't know why I sweat this. Hanging tonight.
Should I get up? Am I leaving?
You might have to go off on this. Okay, thanks.
Oh man, can you help me think one more time, Paula and Lisa? So good, so good. I do love that idea as a creative practice of just being available to the world around you and deliberately seeking out new experiences. I always think like creative work asks that you go to a well, and that well takes refilling on occasion. Okay, next up, I'm gonna be introducing Rebecca Nagle. She's an award-winning advocate and a writer focused on Native rights and ending violence against Native women. She's a citizen of the Cherokee Nation and a two-spirit queer woman. She's also the host of Third Land, the podcast that's focused on treaty rights and This Land, focused on treaty rights and tribal sovereignty in Oklahoma. Her writing has been featured in places like The Washington Post, USA Today, Teen Vogue, The Huffington Post, and more. In 2016, Rebecca was named one of the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development's Native American 40 Under 40 for her work to support survivors and advocate for policy change to address the crisis of violence against Native women. She lives in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, where she works for a tribe on language revitalization. I'll also just say that even on brief first meetings, she comes off as inquisitive, approachable, expressive, really kind, and she chatted about how yesterday afternoon she was on a school bus teaching the first few Cherokee words to the kids there, elementary level kids. So I'll ask that you help me welcome Rebecca Nagle to stage.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm also excited to find the right button for the clicker. Here we go. So before we get started today, I just want to do a land acknowledgement. So here in the great city of Los Angeles, we're on the land of the Tongva people. Osio naga gohin tawton Joplin, Missouri, awatesa dola digagi gaelige Michael Sarah Dundon Agilis Jagesa Francis Polson Dudon Wadu Lisa Wea Utasa Jaliki Ayel Dagilostane Jaleko Onihisti Degadelquan Sa'i na podcast Gadon Ogajeli E Awotlana. Hi, my name is Rebecca Nagle. I'm a citizen of Cherokee Nation. I'm also the writer and the host of the podcast called This Land, and thank you for letting me introduce myself in my own language. I became a storyteller because I didn't see people like me and stories from my community in mainstream news and media, or podcasts for that matter. And I would assume that that is true for a lot of you all who are in this room today. And so today what we're going to talk about is one of the barriers that you have to break through, when you're breaking into mainstream audiences that I feel like doesn't get talked about a lot, and that's breaking through people's ignorance. How do you tell your story to an audience that doesn't share your understanding or your experience? How do you tell your story to an audience that doesn't even have a reference point for your experience? And so we're gonna start specific and then get broad. But I want to first start by talking about Native representation in mainstream media. So first off, this out a little bit. Pop quiz. Raise your hand if you can name a famous Native American actor. And if you say Johnny Depp, we're going to fight later. No, I'm kidding. All right. Raise your hand if you can name or think of a book written by a Native author. A famous Native musician? A famous Native politician? How many of you, or a famous Native podcaster? Obviously not me, because I would be cheating. How many of you can name a famous Native American person who is famous for anything under the sun, who was born after the year 1950? And yes, that rolls out like Sitting Bull and Pocahontas and Sacagawea. So if you answered no to most or all of those questions, it's not an accident, it's not a coincidence. As Native Americans, we are systemically erased from mainstream media, from pop culture, from K through 12 education, and the media that you consume today, even though we are 2% of the population in the United States, we represent less than 1/10 of 1% of people in film, television, and media. A really awesome researcher, Dr. Stephanie Freiberg, who's Tulalip, has done a lot of research to get really specific about what this looks at. And she looked at the 345 most popular television shows in the 2 decades between 1987 and 2007. And of the 2,336 characters on their shows, can anyone guess how many were Native American? Just shout out a couple numbers. It was a little bit better than 0. It was 3. 3 better than 0. What she also found in her research is that when we are depicted, it's almost always as historical images. So in 2015, she released a report where 95 of the first 100 Google image search results for Native American or American Indian were historicized images. So we're sort of always that stoic Indian in the tepia-scented photograph. And this has real impacts on how the public perceives us. This is just a screenshot from my laptop of the Google search results for Dude Native, And in case you're wondering, yes, we pay taxes and no, we don't get free money. And some of us celebrate Thanksgiving, But, what has happened, because there's not real information about real contemporary people, most people's reference point in the United States is sort of way off the mark. And so there's a report that came out in 2018 called Reclaiming Native Truth. And in their surveys, they found that 2/3 of Americans don't think that Native Americans experience significant racial discrimination today. They don't think it's a big problem for us, 2/3 of the population. That is happening in a country where Native Americans face the highest rates of rape and murder, the highest rates of police violence, of poverty. Another insane statistic is that 40% of people in the United States today don't even think that we exist. And so, and you can blame it on the individual. You can say that, people need to do a better job of educating themselves. And why that's true, I think we always sort of have to go back to the systemic reasons for why things are the way they are. And it's a systemic erasure of Native people from, contemporary media and contemporary pop culture that leads to those really wacky views that a lot of people have of us. And it's not just citizens, it's elected officials too. We're gonna give this video a little listen.
My My name is Mark Trahant. I'm the editorial page editor of the Seattle Post-Intelligencer and a member of the Native American Journalists Association. Most school kids learn about government in the context of city, county, state, and federal. And of course, tribal governments are not part of that at all. Mr. President, you've been a governor and a president, so you have a unique experience looking at it from two directions. What do you think tribal sovereignty means in the 21st century, and how do we resolve conflicts between tribes and the federal and state governments?
Yeah. Tribal sovereignty means that. It's sovereign. It means you've been given sovereignty and you're viewed as a sovereign entity. Okay. And therefore, the relationship between the federal government and tribes is one between sovereign entities.
So we can laugh at George Bush. It's kind of hard not to. But who knows what a federally recognized tribe is? You know, how many folks can name 3 federally recognized tribes? And Cherokee, Navajo, Pueblo, Lakota, those aren't the names of tribes, just like American isn't the name of a country. You know, how many people know what the Indian Reorganization Act did? Or, you know, what the policy of land allotment was, in which, within the span of 50 years, tribes lost 2/3 of our land base. You know, that stuff isn't taught. Does anybody know the impact of the Alphonse Supreme Court case? Or can name one law, any law passed by Congress, or one Supreme Court case that impacted Native rights? You know, and this, for me, is sort of why I'm a storyteller, because I don't think that you can extract sort of policy change from narrative. You know, the stories that we tell ourselves as a country about who we are, where we came from, what we're doing, absolutely impact the policies that we pass. You know, and I believe that we're not going to get policies that benefit tribes until the people who are voting and sending people to Washington know what the heck a tribe is, right? You know, a lot of times I make the analogy of sometimes where sort of the wall I have to get past as a Native journalist, it would be kind of like, as a feminist, if when I talk to people about feminism, they were like, you know what? It's so messed up you can't vote. I'd be like, well, that was about 100 years ago. But that's where a lot of people's point of reference is sort of like circa 1890. And then what's happened, you know, with Native American rights and our history is mostly blank for the past 100 years. And so it's challenging. It's frustrating, but it's also work that I really believe in, because I think that this type of narrative change is a really important part of social change. And I don't think this is just specific to Native issues. You know, I'm sort of laying this out so that you guys can think about it in this way, but it's not just impacting Native Americans, you know. Despite it having everything to do with the current immigration crisis, not to mention how much it's impacted millions of people's lives, how many of us really know what the United States government did in Central America? You know, like, when did our CIA help topple the democratically elected leader of Guatemala? You know, like, before I looked it up for this talk, I probably couldn't even tell you the decade. You know, I think climate change is another really good example where it's an issue that it's complicated, it's abstract, it's a lot of science. It's something that I follow and that I really care about. But, you know, if you sort of cornered me and asked me to explain to you, like, the true difference between 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming and 2 degrees Celsius of warming, why some people say that one is okay and the other, and what the tipping point is, I don't know that if I could give you a coherent answer on that. And it's, you know, and I think that goes back to how the media covers it, how it shows up in the news, and what information we're getting as consumers of that media. So, in sort of breaking through those barriers, or breaking through people's ignorance, how do you do it? You know, how do you give information to people in a way that A, they can track and they can follow and they can digest? I think B, that creates that emotional connection, because that's when people are really going to care about an issue. And I would say a lot of times that as a storyteller, that's going to be the same emotional connection that you have to the issue, and inviting your audience into that. And lastly, and you know, I think we have to talk about this with podcasting, how do you keep people engaged? How do you keep people entertained? You know, how do you keep people coming back to that story? So we're gonna talk about a few examples, and first I'm going to talk about some of the challenges we had when making the podcast This Land. So This Land is a podcast I worked on with Crooked Media on Neon Hum. And when we were in the very early stages of production, before we even had an episode outline, I made a list of the different things that people really needed to know or to be able to understand, to not just follow the story, but to understand the case that we were talking about. So it was things like people need to understand like who has criminal jurisdiction in Indian country, what a federally recognized tribe is, the history of the 5 tribes in Oklahoma that the case impacts, and sort of both like our early 1900s history and how the laws that Congress passed that impact us are very similar, and so we have a similar stake in the case, but we're like separate people in terms of culture and in terms of governance. We also needed people to understand Supreme Court procedure, and so Gorsuch was sitting out. So instead of it being an order of 9 justices, it was 8, and so then people needed to understand like what would happen if there was a tie, which would be like a 4-4 vote, which like upholds the lower court's decision, which was actually like really good because the tribe won the lower court's decision. We needed people to understand things like that. You know, when we talk about the history of our land in Oklahoma, we weren't from there. We were actually removed to Oklahoma, so we had to talk about the 1830s removal treaty, and nobody wants to listen to 8 hours of that, of sort of like the list of all of the things that you need to explain. And that's not why I wanted to tell the story of this case in the first place, because it's not why this case matters to me personally as a story, and it's not the story of how the case happened. So, when we were developing the story, we wanted to talk about what the podcast was really about. So This Land is a podcast about a Supreme Court case that will determine the future of half the land in Oklahoma and 5 tribes, including mine. And the case started in a really unusual place. It started in a small town murder in the late 90s where a Creek citizen murdered another citizen of Muskogee Creek Nation and was sentenced to death by the state of Oklahoma. And in his appeal, he said that Oklahoma didn't have jurisdiction to convict him because the crime happened on a reservation. But Oklahoma says that that reservation no longer exists. And that's the question before the Supreme Court right now. And in 2020, we will find out if the Supreme Court will order the largest restoration of Native land in U.S. history, or if they're going to take that land away from us again. So in trying to create compelling stories and trying to get information away from people in a way that is easy to digest and is intelligible and entertaining, there are a few things that I think are really sort of like helpful pinpoints of how to do that. So we're going to go through that real quick with some examples. So the first of all is to use stories to teach facts and history. So when you have that sort of initial list of everything that you need your listener to understand, try and find the story through which you can give them that information. So we're going to give a listen to an example from a podcast called Missing and Murdered by Connie Walker.
Nora says Lillian used to travel with her to workshops and meetings for Indigenous women in the province. One day, she went to pick up Lillian, and when she arrived, Lillian was distraught and holding a newspaper.
So that morning, I went to pick her up, and she came out of her house, and she was holding the newspaper. And she had it like this. She was crying. I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "These are my babies."
So Missing and Murdered, Finding Cleo is a podcast series that's really about how the Canadian government systemically took Native kids out of their communities and out of their families and the devastating impact of that. But the way that Connie Walker tells that story is there are siblings who are all adopted out and they were scattered across North America, the US and Canada, and they've reconnected and they're trying to find out what happened to one of their siblings that they believe is dead. But they don't know where she was adopted to. They don't even know if she's alive or not. They don't know how she died. And so it's sort of the story of how they connect all of those dots. And through the story, you see how damaging this policy was. And this clip is kind of from the climax of the season where she investigates sort of what happened to the mom and what happened when the kids were taken away. And the mom actually found a newspaper ad of her kids being advertised for people to adopt. And it's this example that just really shows how inhumane the policy was that children, humans, would be in the newspaper sort of like the way like a dog or a cat would be. The next tidbit is to develop characters. So as humans, we're going to connect more to a person before we connect to a large and abstract issue. So this example is from 1619 by Nicole Hannah-Jones. And this episode starts with her describing just her really beautiful relationship with her uncle, and then what happened when her uncle got cancer. Let's give it a listen.
So it took literally my uncle getting a death sentence before he was able to get health insurance. That health care gets him out of those free clinics and into an actual cancer clinic in Illinois. And it's there that the doctors give us the news that had they been able to see him months before, he could have had a fighting chance. But it was too late.
And so over the course of that episode, she goes into how the lack of access to healthcare that we have in the United States is really rooted in systemic anti-Black racism and, sort of all of the stuff that comes up whenever this country talks about welfare, of not wanting to help poor people, but that being code for people of color. And she doesn't start you there. She just starts by sort of describing her beautiful relationship with her uncle as she was growing up, and then talks about his preventable death and how the system created that situation. And that story takes you through, then the almost 100 years of US policy that you learn throughout the episode, but you start by understanding why it matters, and why it matters to real people. Another good point, and this was something I actually really struggled with when making this land, is to tie the information to the plot. And so both stories and teaching work well when you segment them out. And so I a lot of times think about developing scripts and outlines for podcasts as sort of like leaving your listeners a little breadcrumb trail where you want them to sort of follow along piece by piece. And the reason I found this really hard is I actually came from a print journalism background, and when you're writing, especially for online, where a lot of people don't even read the whole article, you put everything up top. You have that nut graph that kind of says the whole idea, and then everything kind of flows from there. And I think of podcasting or audio media being almost the opposite, where you want people to get pieces of information, one piece at a time. And I think sometimes when you have to explain a really complicated idea that needs to be broken up, you can even find a way for the plot to be driven by the listener always getting new pieces of information. I think a really good example of this is Caliphate, where you learn so much about ISIS, but it's through the reporter's the story of her investigation and meeting an ex-recruit, of going to Mosul, of finding this briefcase, of finding the person who had the briefcase and the documents, and what does it mean about the inner workings of that government. And so that's a way, when you sort of make that giant list of stuff you have to teach the audience about, is a way to sort of lay it out where people always feel like they're waiting for the next thing, which is what you want in a serial podcast. I think another really great thing to do is to use metaphor. So when you're talking about an abstract concept that most people don't have a reference point, find the thing that people have a reference point for and use that to teach the thing that people don't know. So in this land, there was some information about how Indian country in Oklahoma works and what's considered Indian country and what's not. That was pretty complicated. And so we came up with this metaphor. Let's give it a listen.
So they broke up these reservations and they gave everybody, or they allotted into different ways and different formulas, land to different Indians.
Picture a sheet cake. Allotment came along and sliced up the cake into a bunch of pieces. The pieces are now owned by individual citizens in the tribe, not the tribe as a whole.
And so we actually continue to use that metaphor because what's relevant in this case is that people own mineral rights instead of surface rights. So we extended the metaphor to, talk about the icing of the cake and the cake itself. And it was the idea of actually the executive producer, Vikram Patel. And that's another thing that I think is great. We had great editors and great people working on this land. I know Catherine St. Louis is here at the conference. She was the editor as well. And it is just very helpful, I think, especially when you're working with material that you're really familiar with, to sometimes have those outside perspectives on the team to help you do that work of translating. And lastly, the sort of my last little takeaway tidbit is to just name what people don't know. Don't be afraid to point out people's ignorance. Sometimes you kind of have to dispel the myths that are in people's heads before you can get them to the information that you want them to digest. So here's an example, again, from this land. We had an episode, in episode 2, we were introducing listeners to the tribe, Muskogee Creek Nation, and the government that's really at the center of this case. But to do that, we kind of had to dispel, the stereotypes that are in people's minds about what a tribe is. So let's give it a listen.
If the place where you imagine contemporary tribal leaders conduct their business looks like a teepee or a wigwam, you want to pause here and erase that mental image. Instead, picture City Hall, the county courthouse, a state office building.
So, I think that a lot of times when we're talking about contemporary tribal governments, people sort of picture like Dances with Wolves or something like that versus, a democratically elected 3-branch, government that is just as sort of bureaucratic as, the city of Los Angeles or a county or a state government. And so, I think if you know that there is information that your listeners are going to have that is maybe going to be a bias that they're unaware of or just misinformation that they're coming to your podcast with, don't be afraid to name it and point it out. So I think doing this type of work comes with some challenges, right? It can be hard to talk to folks that are sort of outside of your community or outside of the people who are impacted by the issues that you're talking about. So, one challenge is translation exhausting. It is tiring to explain things to people. And a lot of times when you're working on stuff like this, you're not just going to be explaining it in the script. You're going to be explaining it to the people that you're working with. You're going to be explaining it to people who are asking you questions on social media. You're going to be explaining it, when you just sort of like run into people and you're having conversations about it. And I know there are a couple episodes that we worked on that go into my own personal family history and also the history of my tribe that are just, the information and the history is devastating. And so there was also just that layer of, trauma and pain in addition to figuring out how to make it a workable script. And so I think that's just one thing I found that it helped to be aware of and to just know that was going to come up. I think other challenges are, I like even today being here, have a lot of imposter syndrome. And I think it can be kind of hard, when you're working on a project. Like I know with this land, it would keep me up at night to make sure that I was really getting things right and that the way that I was presenting the legal information was accurate, that the way that I was telling the story was helpful to the communities who are impacted by it. And especially, if you're kind of the person in the room who's like that level of quality control, the weight and the responsibility of that can be a lot. And it can also feel overwhelming to feel like you have to speak for an entire community. And so I think that those are things that, I try and have folks that I can like run things by, like other Native folks or other Native journalists that I work with, to get feedback, to get other people to weigh in on things, so that I don't feel like I have to do it alone. But it's also just something to be aware of, that if you're going to do this type of work, there's things that are probably going to come up. And then I think external challenges are, meeting people where they're at. Like I'll always remember there was this moment where I put just a reference to blood quantum in one of the scripts, and the editor was like, "What's blood quantum?" And I was, oh, right. Most people who, even though as Native people, you kind of can't escape blood quantum, it comes up everywhere. A lot of people who are non-Native don't know what that is. And so there's sort of that constant checking of making sure that the way that you're presenting the information is something that people can get. I think one challenge is explaining without giving a lecture. So when you have a lot of teaching to do, I wish I could take everyone back to elementary school and change the curriculum. But then when I'm, storytelling, people don't want to feel like they're back in their civics classroom. So how do you convey that information that people need without giving a lecture? And then I think what's really hard is, I know when I got the opportunity to create this podcast, I wanted to put absolutely everything into it because I was like, oh my gosh, this is this huge platform and we need to tell people everything that they need to know about everything. And, so then there's that hard, inevitable decision of what to cut out. So, what we're talking about here in doing this kind of storytelling or doing this narrative change, you can talk about it as sort of not preaching to the choir, talking to people who are outside of your bubble, translating, educating, meeting people where they're at. But for me, sort of what underlines all of that is this idea of working towards narrative change and sort of building audiences and building people who aren't familiar with issue areas and, changing the way that they perceive those things. What it is not is, or what I'm not telling people that they should go out and do is placating or appeasing people's ignorance. It's not about being agreeable. Just because you're meeting people where you're at doesn't mean that you're responsible for their comfort. And it's not about challenging them or them never feeling uncomfortable. It's creating an entry point into an issue area, but it's not doing people's work for them, right? It's inviting them to do their own work. And then I think another important distinction is that what I'm talking about, I guess, in this talk is not really media for a community by a community. And so I think, if you're a podcaster and you're like, well, I'm not trying to talk to people who don't share my experience. I'm trying to talk to people who do share my experience. I think that that's equally valid. And I don't think there's a hard line between those things. When we were making the podcast, I get emails both from people, who are Native, who are from Oklahoma, who have been following the case, who are so excited to see it getting more media attention and to see the history of their tribe in a podcast. And also non-Native folks who are emailing me and saying, wow, I had absolutely no idea this was going on. So I think both are possible at the same time, too. So thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the talk. I wanted to give a shout out to some awesome podcasts that are made by some other Native women. So if you're not familiar with them, check out Matisse in Space, While Indigenous. There's a really great podcast that just came out this past year called All My Relations with Adrienne Keene and Matika Wilbur. I mentioned Missing and Murdered, Finding Cleo by Connie Walker. There's Molly and Denali, which is a kids show. There's Women of Size Pod. There's a lot of stuff being made by awesome Native women. So if those things aren't already in your feed or already things that you've listened to, definitely subscribe and check them out. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention, if you're not a content creator, but maybe where you work or your role is you're deciding what content gets made, I think that's sort of a different role in kind of the podcast ecosystem. And, I hear a lot of people say that, everyone's making a podcast now. There's sort of this saturation, and maybe there are too many podcasts. I don't think that there are too many podcasts. I think we still need more podcasts, but maybe we don't need more podcasts about, a woman that was murdered and who murdered her and the really smart guy who figured it out, right? And so I think we need a lot more content and a lot more media from those voices that aren't voiceless or aren't already telling their stories, but aren't having the same platforms. And I would also just say, too, invite you guys to think about at your organization where you work, think about, the employees, maybe even then expand that out to think about all of the people that freelance at your organization and on the shows, when you're booking guests, when you're booking experts, if the work that you're doing is representative of the population of Native people in the United States, 1 out of every 50 of those people should be Native. And I bet at a lot of companies, and we know this just based on the information of how we're represented in media jobs, it's 0 or close to 0. So I would invite you to go back and think about, where there are places to include more Native voices, and I'm happy to be like a connector or a resource for that. So definitely reach out to me. And thank you everyone so much for your time and your attention. I'm so excited to be at Werk It. Thank you.
Rebecca Nagle, host of This Land, thank you so much. That was legitimately a master class, I think, in a lot of ways on storytelling, how to make personal narratives engaging, even if you've got a lot to teach without making it an eat your vegetables moment. I think a lot of us probably think about that as we're designing our narratives. Also that idea of making the distinction between the knowledge that you're so thoroughly invested in, and trying to figure out how much of that context is shared with the audience to which you're speaking. I think that's really hard work. I think about even just like when I'm talking about my mom, I have to remind myself that I have an entire lifetime of familiarity, that those first few adjectives are the entirety of the information that my conversational partner has access to. I did speed dating in the very early 2000s, and for a friend, don't worry about it. And we were doing the thing where you circulate, and it's like a 3-minute date, and one of the dudes was like, so what do you do? And I said, I'm a rapper. And usually, there's a lot of cheap jokes to make about that. I get it, I don't look like a rapper. I've heard them all already, though. I wasn't really interested in it. And at the end of the conversation, though, he goes like, so wow, that's cool. Is that mostly seasonal? We didn't have a shared context, he thought I was at Macy's. Okay. For our next session, we are going to hear from a couple of the people who've been working really hard the entire Werk It festival thus far. The duo that we are about to listen to is none other than TK Dutes, who is the consulting executive producer, for Here to Slay, and a producer at Glitch. Go ahead and clap over me, for real. She also taught a workshop on the basics of audio tech at our podcast boot camp on Wednesday, and she is joined on stage by Gabrielle Horton. In addition to being the lead producer of Here to Slay, she is also the founder and chief storyteller at the Woodshaw. Please help me give it up for TK and Gabrielle.
How y'all doing, Werk It?
Hi. Oh my God, the lights.
I always wanted to say, how y'all doing, Los Angeles? All right. I'm TK.
And I'm Gabrielle.
And I don't know, we don't have a fun name for each other. We are the duo.
Yeah, it's just us two.
But we're friends. And this is a transparent look at the glow up. Our careers have been growing together, separately, alongside each other, adjacently.
Right, and it's kind of like our Twitter DMs and text conversations on the stage, basically, and hopefully it can help some folks in the room, and just maybe it's like a therapy session for us. But
I think so. So we're gonna just get into it and talk about the different ways that we can help each other in the community. We're talking about each other as women of color.
Yeah.
But honestly, you can apply this to your group of people, right? Every group has the group of homies. And sometimes the group chat is lit, and sometimes everybody has similar things in common.
Yeah.
And we need to let each other know about hazards.
Yeah, and sometimes shit's not good, and that's also what the group chat is for.
Yes.
So it's all about navigating the goods and the bad, the highs, the lows, with the supportive network around you and what it looks like to build that out.
Because we need each other.
We do.
So, shall we
get to it?
First step.
Yeah, so when we thought about this, it was like, we met a little over a year ago, right? And so what does it look like to kind of find your person? Specifically for us here in this audience and here at this festival, it's about in the podcasting industry. So what does it look like to find someone? It's not like, I'm gonna walk up to you in the front row, you're my person, I got you, and you're gonna be with me for the next year. This was a very organic relationship. And so TK is for sure my person, right? And so I came into this industry coming from graduate school. I had worked in politics before, was studying public policy, And I happened to meet TK at a conference, and I was like, let's stay in touch, right? And I wanted to sort of just learn from her. I didn't know what that looked like, because she was in New York, I was in Michigan. But I think one of the main takeaways from like our early sort of like budding friendship, our budding sort of like work, colleague, whatever that word is, colleague shit, you know? Was staying in touch. It was like the follow-up email, right? And when I found myself in New York, it was reaching out ahead of time, making myself available to come to her at the time. She had her booming 3 times a week morning show. And I was like, can I just come and listen and to kind of be in your presence, and not even having an ask, but making sure I was really clear about the follow-up, really clear about the ask, and just making myself available.
And I think what I appreciated about that most was it was not, can we meet for coffee? It was not, can I pick your brain? It was, where can I come meet you that you are doing your thing? So I can just be a fly on the wall, and then maybe we'll talk later. Right? She made it easy for me to say, yes, come through. Right? So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I think that was the key to it, because when you get like those pick your brain and coffee things, there's nothing more, it turns me, like, that's a turn off,
it's a
fam.
weird one.
Sorry, it's a turn off. Like, come with that clarity, come with, make it easy, you know, to meet. So like, that's the first step, the meeting.
I would agree. I think we always even have someone we can hear
have a
from.
clip from our friend.
We brought other folks with us on the stage.
Verilyn is one of my people. She's a producer at WNYC. Actually, and also you don't have to just have one person. I have many people, and at every single part of this story that is our lives, we have people that usher us through.
Correct.
And most of the people in my personage are people of color and women.
Same. Mine are all women of color holding me down.
So let's hear from Verilyn.
I first interned in WNYC's newsroom when I was in college, around 2006. And, you know, the newsroom was predominantly white. And
all right.
Okay.
It's all right, but I'll read it.
I first interned in WNYC's newsroom when I was in college, around 2006. And, you know, the newsroom was predominantly white. And I just remember feeling very discouraged, not because of my ability, but more just thinking about my possibilities within this career, within this field, making audio, making radio. And this was definitely before the onset of podcasting. And I would say that it took a mentor of mine telling me about Michelle Martin and Farai Chidea and Michelle Norris and women that were already thriving in this field, because, you know, you can't be what you can't see. And so I think my community has, on a very practical level, gotten me jobs and gotten me money that would allow me to actually pay my bills. But then also just gotten me to think about the possibilities and to dream my dreams and to go after them and to feel strong in my expertise and my perspective and in the things that I value and being able to bubble those things up to the surface.
That was pretty perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even have to be talking anymore, but all right.
Yeah.
But I think after the meeting with like Verilyn, with me and you, it comes with developing.
Yeah.
I met Verilyn, actually, our relationship goes back and forth.
Yeah.
So we met in that first part of podcasting that hadn't hit yet. We were, you know, she came from WNYC as a radio rookie.
Okay.
And she was looking for experience on live radio. And we met at WBAI, and I was her person first.
Wow.
Then she became my person when I was entering professional podcasting. And she was like, I have this show that, you know, you could get you know, your chops up on in terms of that. So she became my plug. So we had a back and forth personhood.
Yeah.
And so I had to hit her up to talk about this. But then developing the relationship, what does that look like, Gabby?
Oh, gosh. And I think that kind of takes us to our next point as well, right? So thinking about what it looks like. So you found your person, you found your people, you found like, we kind of use tribe and squad a lot, but you found the crew of people that you kind of trust. You're navigating this space with people you can go to when you need advice, right? And so as you start to kind of like level up within your career, next slide, you know, thinking about what does it look like to sort of develop these networks so that people can actually land the jobs they need, but also as you're navigating that interview sort of like process, you're thinking about negotiations. I think so much of what you and I really bonded over is like we were going through a lot of the same shit at the same time, but me, it was like coming in as a newbie newbie to the industry and me kind of like, TK, like, what do I ask for? Like,
Yeah.
what are appropriate rates? Because y'all know Air just updated the thing, thank God, recently. But for a minute, it was looking at 2013 dates. Like, how do you kind of like translate that into 2018, early 2019 pay, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about like, do I need to get some lawyers? Like, but also thinking about like, I heard X, Y, and Z about this organization or this company. Is it really as bad as I heard? Is the management as crazy? You know, so it
Yeah.
was like thinking about how to develop these things, but like not sort of taking over all of your time, right? It was making sure I was very clear and I think intentional about the time I was asking TK or other persons in my life for, right? But it was also like, you're starting to develop a friendship, and so how do you manage and balance the friendship alongside this budding kind of career relationship you all are working on as well?
We would literally take off our hats. Like,
Yeah.
we would like go, okay, we're talking about this thing. This conversation is for that. Hang up the phone. Call you in 2 days. Girl, tell me about this dude you went on this date with.
Oh, yeah,
right?
that'd be
like,
fun.
There's like different hats
But it was very
that we
clear
wear.
though,
Yeah.
and like there's even now, as you guys know, we work together on Here to Slay. Like I was in New York, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, and you know, I wanted to see TK or whatever, catch up, and we made it very clear. I was like, this is not a non-Here to Slay work.
Yeah.
Like we about to just have a boozy brunch
And we did.
get lit. It was
Child,
it was a mess actually. We were there
3
till it
p.m.,
closed,
it was 3
but it was
wines
like
later.
you know, it was great. But we didn't talk anything about work. And I think as you're developing the relationship, it's also making sure that it's a two-way street. It's checking in to see how you doing, how's therapy going, how's so and so, how's your mom doing, right?
Yep.
Like how's the new apartment in Brooklyn? You happy to be back in BK? Like
I am.
It's I know, we know. But it's like balancing that, checking in, and actually like valuing you as a friend. And I think I have this with Isabeth Mendoza, who's here. I don't know where, there she is. That's my girl here in LA. But there's other folks like to the side and front and kind of coming up behind me that I kind of try and balance that. It's not with everybody, right? Because everybody doesn't fit these multiple roles in your life. But the folks who do, you have to really treasure it and really find a way to be balanced with it, I think.
And I think what happens to us as we grow and we get to know each other, and even at conferences or gatherings and whatnot, like, you know, I love my producer friends, and we'll have, you know, it'll be someone's birthday and we'll all be there, and guess what? We're talking about work. And it's like, damn, can we not?
Yeah.
And that's part of the boundaries too, and that's part of maintaining a relationship. Because if it's, the only thing I know about you is your job, then I don't really know you, right?
Yeah.
Do I really trust you with these things that I'm about to say?
Right.
And like, yeah, we're giving each other the tea and whatever, but there's other stuff behind this conversation about pitches and negotiations and stuff that color our decision makings that have to do with our real lives, that it's nice to like put down the show stuff and talk about real shit for a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hear from Isabeth.
Yeah, we are. I mean, you're not gonna
About
get up. We got you.
Leveling up.
Hi, my name is Isabeth Mendoza, and I'm a freelancer from and based in Southeast Los Angeles. Some advice that I would offer to freelancers is to build community. It's important to have your crew of unofficial coworkers who can troubleshoot story ideas and projects, but also just be able to text them and say, hey, I'm having a shitty day. Especially when you wake up and just lay in bed, watching the sun come up, and you don't want to check your phone because it may be another pitch that got rejected or someone saying your rate is too high. You need your people to remind you of your worth and that your craft is needed in this world. Another piece of advice is recognizing that opportunities are just that, opportunities. And if they don't align with your goals, then just take them as affirmations that you're doing something amazing, but you don't have to take the gig, and you can pass them to one of your homegirls. And lastly, celebrate those affirmations, the wins, and the losses. You gotta trust the reroute.
Yay,
That was
thank
good.
you so much.
Ooh, I like
She
that.
took us to church. Come on, Isabeth.
Thank you.
And I think that one thing you said that was key, Isabeth, was you know, if you don't get the thing, it's affirmation. Like, yo, I failed up so hard in 2018.
Yeah.
When the fails are name brand fails, child, you're doing it right.
Yeah, we
You are
celebrated
doing it
those.
right. We celebrated some
those.
name brand
They'd be
fails.
like, girl, what you had that meeting though. We were so excited about those, the upward fails, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think especially what Elizabeth is saying, I mean, especially me now as an independent producer, TK is at Glitch full time, but obviously, you know, has some consulting jobs and does a lot of workshops, you know, throughout the year. I mean, I think it's a really unique place to be when you're kind of cultivating this relationship and you don't have a traditional, whatever that means for you, right? But for me, I think of like an office, somewhere I physically go Monday through Friday, or like I have a team that I know where they're located. You know what I mean? Like that kind of whole thing. I don't have that anymore. So this kind of network that I have built up around me, whether it's New York, LA, or anywhere in between, it's almost crucial to my survival because I'll be honest with you all, as an independent, there are some lonely ass days. I think I was talking to Juleka and Tuca Williams about this yesterday. I'm learning how to balance like being like a new kind of company owner, being an independent producer, and like trying to still be around people when everything I do is so remote. So this network is kind of crucial to your survival, almost to your mental health, but also to that paycheck as well.
Amen.
Yeah.
Speaking to that paycheck,
Yeah.
what we talk about internally and what we talk about with other people that like trust us and that we trust is negotiation,
money,
pitches,
money,
interviews,
all the
and
good
not,
stuff.
like all the stuff that you got from all of the other conference, workshops. Yes, we talk about that, but we go, when you find your people and you're in the real group chat, there's the level of talking about it from, is this a, is this place toxic, right?
Yeah.
When I was failing up in those, job opportunities, some of them I ended up so happy that I didn't get because of the way that they ended the relationship, right? And I was like, wow, I'm lucky.
People showed their ass, basically.
And they showed their ass, and I'm able to say to my trusted people, listen, these people show their asses, and you don't want to see it.
And you know I got a list of that too.
Facts.
So we do that. And we talk very candidly about pay too. Like I have, for instance, I had a new client proposal this week I had to submit. And before I submit it, right, I trust my numbers, I trust my estimation. You know, I'm looking at the air guide, I'm looking at Werk It guide, but I'm gonna bounce it to TK, be like, can you check these numbers,
And not
right?
just to me, you bounced it to a couple
I bounced
people.
it to Kelly as well, who she's not here with us today. She's our other co-producer on the show. I was like, Kelly, and she's a white woman, so I was like, if any,
Listen,
like, give me the
white
royalty. Is this the
prices.
money that you're making, or like,
Yeah.
should I be going higher? You really got to have a white woman in your corner to kind of figure that out too.
Facts.
So Kelly was crucial. Kelly was like, girl, you need to go up a little bit. I said, thanks, Kelly. But it's like being able to trust folks, because you have to realize everybody does not care about you winning. And so I'm not gonna send that on a Twitter blast, like comment on these projected sort of like salary things I'm like, giving to a new client. Everybody doesn't wanna see you win. So when you have the people around you who are key, who you trust, you can bounce those kind of ideas off of them and get real feedback, you know?
And I would say that we use each other to like break down if we're going for jobs.
Yeah.
And sometimes, listen, we know, if you are here and you're hiring and whatnot, we know you all need to look at how you are asking people questions. There's a lot of coded language in the hiring process, and we know this. We're not, listen, we want the job, so we're not gonna flag you on that. Also, that's not our job to do. But we are telling each other internally. I went on this interview, and this third person asked me some shit that is frankly racist, sexist, it's some ist. And we talk to each other about that, so I'm here to tell you we know. There's that. Can we talk about feelings in terms of sharing some of this stuff? Which even when I'm talking to Gabrielle, even when I'm talking to Julia Furlan, even when I'm talking to my good friends, there's feelings of whatever, inadequacy, shame, not feeling like you're ready, and
imposter syndrome, like a mug.
Or even like low-key, I don't want to say jealousy. Is there like something less than jealousy? But like,
I didn't know what that word, but I know what you mean. Where you feel some kind of way, but
I
you're
feel
not full out
ways,
jealous.
but I want to help.
But
right?
I'm feeling some kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, why are they not asking me for it?
We've had that.
We've had that.
Yeah.
We have actually had that.
I felt a way.
Yeah, we've had some ways
You wanna
about
talk
each
about
other.
that?
You started.
Okay.
I'm like, you started. You go.
Fine.
What was it? It was something though.
I mean, it was probably like I might have a different lens on it. So.
Oh shit.
I mean,
let me learn some things.
You, my other like good homies that are younger than me, you all are rising at a rate that is faster than I could have ever imagined. Right?
Yeah.
So me and you, we're in the same job market.
Yeah, it's wild.
And my experience looks different. And also,
you got more experience. We'll just put it out there. You have way more years of experience than I do. But we be kind of in the same boat for some of the same jobs, though.
Facts, because
it's awkward. You're right. This has been the elephant in the room.
But that's not us. It's not our fault. It's the fault. There's no fault. Whatever.
It's just awkward.
There's fault.
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird shit. Yeah.
But you know who makes us feel a ways? and then we project it onto each other, it's people that don't take that experience that I have or that other people have seriously, right? Your experience as a community builder or a person that produces a podcast for your church or whatever, all that is valid, true, and real, right? When you break it down, what does that mean? You can manage a group of people. It doesn't matter if it was at your church. It doesn't matter if it was in your basement. Did you engineer that show? Does it sound good? Doesn't matter if it's free, if it has sponsors, or whatever the fuck ever, right? But a lot of these places make you feel like this stuff is not valid experience, and then we internalize that, and we're in the job market with people that are younger than us, and we don't know how to be better ambassadors for the community, right? So when we were talking, you were up for, you was up for some big money work, and I had no prospects at the moment, right? So I'm talking to Gabby, I'm depressed, and she's telling me, TK, just help me work this out, and I'm working through shit while she's telling me her good fortune, and I want to be a good ambassador to the community and help her. So I'm putting my shit to the side, right? But then when we take off the hat and we put the friend hat on, I'm like, girl, I'm depressed, child.
And sometimes we had to space out our conversations because, like, I think this is the first time actually we've ever talked about this, but I felt it and I knew it, I was aware of it. But I was like, if it ever gets super awkward, she's gonna say something, I'm gonna say something. But I think it was this thing that we both acknowledged. Now, I think I felt some of the similar things that you're saying, right? So you're thinking about people who are younger than you in the same job market. I'm thinking about someone like me who transitioned out a completely different career. I mean, imposter syndrome, I think I probably wrestled with that every single day, maybe up until, I don't know, mid-July, like a couple months ago, if that, And that was because, again, like the way that we value what a producer is capable of doing is very skewed. And it really changes and it really sort of differs between organizations, between coasts probably and cities, but also between projects, right? And so getting the confidence in myself to say, hey, like I did 6 years in politics, I have an entire graduate degree, can write the hell out of blah, 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 kind of really don't like tape cutting, which don't tell anybody, right? So it's like, how do I kind of like embrace all the stuff that I love to do, right, that I'm good at and can keep growing at, but like still see myself as a producer when like the job market is saying like, you're not that. So, and then knowing TK, who does every fucking role possible, right? So I'm like, damn, well, TK does everything.
I never met a job I didn't like, child.
Right, so she does everything of the process, and there's honestly are only certain parts of the process that I really enjoy doing, and that I do, and I'm lucky now that I can just focus on those things. So I think we had some feelings about different things about our relationship, which I'm glad you guys are letting us air out. You all today.
Listen, I mean, and this is it's a testament to like being able to speak on it and speak freely. So thank you for
But I think
listening.
it's a good transition to like thinking about how we think about passing the baton, right? So like because we're both have been aware of each other's like skill sets, expertise, and knowing what the other is interested in, like on a very genuine level. Like for instance, when it was time for us, here to say we had some reorganization that happened around like June or so, and we needed to bring in someone who was an executive producer consultant. And as much as I wanted to like take on all these roles at Here to Slay, right, it was like, this is really not my lane kind of thing. And when it was like, we need to find someone with X, Y, and Z, and I talked with Roxanne and Tressie, and it was like, okay. And we had a couple names, I put a couple folks in, 2 women of color, one of them being TK. But even when I came to TK about it, I was like, I think you could be a really great fit for this. And it was a struggle. No. She was trying to fight it. I'm like, what are you, and I had listened to my friend talk about wanting to sort of get experience with being an executive producer. And I'm like, why don't you just at least put your name in the hat, And she was like, I don't know, let me sleep on it. I'm like, what are we doing? I'm like, come on, And it took a few days.
It did. It took me
a
like
while. It took
4
a little
days
longer than necessary.
to let you say that to them, to let you even boost me. I was like, girl, here's like 5 more names before me.
She gave everybody else a name. I said, girl, I already gave them the names.
Y'all were all in the running to become America's Next Top Model. Like, I was not trying to do it.
And what's crazy is when I had mentioned her name to them, we had like I remember exactly, we had a Sunday like morning call, and I was like, here are a few names, and I mentioned your name, and they were like, oh, we've heard of her. And I was like, oh, and I remember telling you, I was like, oh, they've like heard about you already. And so it's like, people start to know your work, right? Your work and your expertise speaks for itself. And then when you have folks who are able to sit at the table or be on that phone call to vouch for you, it's a world of a difference, But like encouraging someone who is ready to step into that that light, like being that friend, but also being that colleague to be like, this is you. You got this. I'm not going to take your shine, take this money to try and do it all, be Superwoman, because this is what you really excel at, and you're ready for this. And you was ready, and you are ready.
This is a big test. Let's hear from a new friend.
So when I think about how I want to empower the people I work with, specifically the women I work with, I want to empower them to make decisions, to speak up and own their ideas, take credit for their ideas, and do the thing that maybe, or the things that maybe they don't feel like they have the right to do or like the experience to do. I really like to empower people to try and to really jump into the deep end and do the thing messily and learn from it and keep doing it and make a mess and learn from it and make a mess and learn from it. It's like, make the thing that you want to make right now. There's not a really compelling reason to wait usually. And then, the other thing is like, I don't think we have to live in a world shrouded in bullshit. Like, I believe in shooting straight with each other. We don't always have to be nice. And I like to empower women to be themselves.
And that was Aaliyah Tavakolian. Yeah, you could give it up for her. She's an executive producer at Spoke. Hey, my Spoke friends, Spoke Media. And I met Aaliyah at Work It last year in New York, and we became friends. And since then, that was another thing, right?
Yeah.
She talked about empowering, validating.
Yeah.
We're here together as women and as women of color, as people in the LGBTQ community, in all groups, to empower and validate each other's experiences, right? Because we know culturally and historically what's behind that, right? Only you know your people, and you need to empower and validate them. And Aaliyah has been doing that for me since I met her last year, talking me up in rooms that I'm not in.
Work It's a great place for that. Work It's a good place for that, because so if we're gonna be honest, a year ago, I was interning actually at Crooked Media, like a graduate intern. I didn't have money to come to Work It, and I wasn't gonna ask, anyways, we'll go into it. But I wasn't gonna ask, oh, mom, can I have, it was just you gotta be grown about this shit. Either you're going or you're not going, and whatever. And I remember telling TK, I'm like, I can get the flight out there, I've got housing. And TK was like, you know what, actually I have an extra sort of assistant badge, so you can come and take, get access to all of the opportunities here at Work It. And that's kind of an example of empowering the people around you, right? So at that point, that was last October, I believe. Yeah. So we had a few months of a budding friendship, but she knew I was serious about really making this transition. She knew I was really about it. And so it was nothing for me to sort of okay, I can accept that, and making sure that I was there. And getting to Work It just opened up so many doors for me, if I'm being quite honest, right? Met Erica Clark at Spotify, and that really sort of changed a lot for me, right? Reiko Murthy as well. Yep. Just so many dope women of color that I got to connect with. And had that not been for TK being I got you, I have this extra thing, do you want to come and assist? I need help with X, Y, and Z. It really, really changed the game for me in a lot of ways. So that's an example of empowering people who are coming up behind you, but also we talk a lot about empowering people who are right next to you on the side of you. Issa Rae talks about that a lot, right? It doesn't have to be this very vertical structure of how you're kind of supporting and empowering. It can be the people who are right next to you, and so
and boosting and the awareness of passing a baton is the awareness of being able to receive it, right? I know that when she said that, I need to get out there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, how can she come out to this thing?
Yeah.
Well, I need a person's help.
Yeah.
But can she make a slideshow, fam? Are you ready to receive these blessings?
Yes,
you gotta work for
them
too.
PowerPoint. Pretty good at
and if someone's putting you up for a job, just because we're women and we're women of color or we're LGBTQ, just because we're in the same affinity group, doesn't mean, or we met at a conference and shook hands, that I'm gonna vouch for you.
Say it again.
It doesn't mean that the person should vouch for you, child. Say it again.
Say it again.
It's facts. We have to be, this is all about being thoughtful in what we're doing, because we are asking each other to do an incredible amount of work. And it's emotional labor. It's like
Shit is stressful.
I'm thinking about another person, and another person is thinking about me, right?
Yeah.
And it's like if Gabby fucks up, I fuck up, right?
Because that's that collective, whether you like it or not, right?
Yep.
Especially as Black women.
The world is
especially-
looking at
and
all
you
of
go
us.
through all the groups, right? It's like one of you fucks up with that recommendation, they may never ask TK for another recommendation again.
Right.
So it's like it all reflects, right? So it's like being ready, as we talk a lot about. It's like not just saying those words out loud, like affirming like what you want to sort of see for your career, your life, but being ready when those blessings, those gifts, those opportunities start to come down. You have to be ready to receive and ready to kind of like hit the ground moving.
Ask your, when you're asking for a reference, right? Like, can you be my reference or whatever? Are you able to do the job that you're going for? Because I'm not gonna lie just because we're homies, right?
Yeah.
Can you do tape syncs?
Send the
Can you
tapes.
cut tape? Can you? I will
Send
have
the
you
job
send me a
description.
link,
Yeah.
child. Send me a link to
Yeah.
a piece of your work or something. I can't just say like, oh, we cool and I'm gonna be your reference. You have to be able to receive the baton that I'm passing you.
Totally.
But however, on the outside, because we talking to everybody today, right? So shout out to the POC audio directory.
Yes,
Clap it up
shout
for
out to them.
Because a lot
Phenomenal
of folks,
resource.
Phenomenal resource.
Yeah.
And also the people on Twitter, shout out to Renee of Broccoli Content as well from the UK who's doing the same thing but in the UK.
She was great. We had to find someone in London for here to slay. And like, I was like, hey, can you help with this? And like on it. You
Done
had
and
so
done.
many dope folks of color in the UK.
Just out here
Anyways,
name
the
dropping.
network is growing.
The
It's
network is
international.
growing. The network is vast. But also as people that are hiring other people, and I have friends that are higher up than me and whatever. There are these tools for a reason, right? And sliding in our DMs or sliding in your black friend, your one black friend's DM or your one gay friend's DM ain't
not
the
gonna
way.
work.
It ain't gonna work, right? And saying, hey, do you know one human black woman for this one human job, right? And I'm like, yo, there's a directory.
Yeah.
And your job, we already made the work easy by collecting the names of each other.
A whole database.
Right?
Yeah.
Like somebody else could have collected it, but we're already doing half the work for you by collecting it.
Yeah.
So asking a person to give like, hey, like it's like it's also almost how it's formed. It's very like, no big deal. Can
It's
you
so
just do
casual.
like this
Yeah.
extra layer of work?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you go to the directory.
Yeah.
You get their names, you gather them, and you interview them. We are not hiring managers.
Yeah.
But when we do recommend our friends, it's not because you asked us, it's because we want to. Because we know they could do it.
And they're
because
capable.
we believe in the thing. But none of this, like, if someone doesn't reply to your email about that, don't be sad. Don't be salty.
Yeah.
They don't have time. The directory is there for a reason. Go through it and do your own like interviews and stuff because we can't.
We just had to get that off our
We just had
chest
to
real
get
quick.
it off our chest. Yeah. So anything else in terms of passing the baton?
I think that's good.
Okay. What about doing you?
Oh. Well,
Oh no, we don't have
Well,
a
we're not
baton
really
for
gonna
doing
do
you.
us, I
So
guess.
how do you do you?
How do I
As we
do-
say on Here to Slay.
No, it's how do I help you do you? But how do I help me do me?
Just how do you do you?
Oh, that's you. Okay. How do I do me? I think just being honest about what I am available for. So I think especially as an independent producer, like setting clear boundaries, right? So whether that's just making sure like I have like the proper time blocked off on like, our calendar, where it's like, Gabrielle is not available for these hours, and there's not really an explanation needed, but it's like, this is my time to do other projects, other work, So I think setting boundaries around my personal time and my work time, I'm trying, I'm kind of a workaholic, as you know, so like I'll be up at all hours of the night doing all kind of stuff for the show, but I think it's been learning how to do that, and I've found myself, it's a lot healthier, right? I have a therapist, she's also really great. I sit outside for lunch sometimes and soak up the sun. Like, sometimes it's the small things, though, but it's also being really open with you all, like, hey, today's not a good day for me, or like, this week is really crazy. So I think the more honest you are with your colleagues, coworkers, who also maybe also be friends, I think it's just a better way to kind of move through this path and actually kind of excel in your own career.
And what are you doing for yourself that's outside of all these things, to push yourself forward?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's like always sort of thinking about new resources I can take advantage of to sort of get sharper, whether it's with like, so I do the scripting for Here to Slay, so thinking about how I can get better with those kind of like, those really technical things that like I really enjoy doing, and thinking about how I can sort of parlay that into other clients. It's also working with other clients and other projects, and I started a whole company, so it's like that keeps me pretty busy.
I'm clapping you up. She started a company.
Yeah.
What's it called?
It's called The Woodshaw, and it launches in November, and I'm really excited about it. It was like a kind of a big FU to, but you know, these white boys who are out here just starting companies every 30 seconds.
Just out here, just
out here, just
LLC.
casually like sneezing and starting companies. I'm like, well, let me sneeze and start a company too. And so I did. So, I mean, that's keeping me really busy because I can just stretch my mind to think about so many projects. I'm working with You Had Me at Black on a really dope Black birthing docuseries that we're looking forward to launching next April for Black Maternal Health Week. Working with some new clients about some really dope podcasts, revamping and getting ready for new seasons. So all of that allows me to do research and dig into other kind of like conversations and just topics that I'm not always familiar with, but really stretching my mind. And so I guess that's what I do. I work a lot, you know.
You work a lot.
I work too much, but it's good stuff now.
I guess I'll wrap by saying, piggybacking off of, first of all, again, set boundaries.
Yeah.
And don't be apologetic about that.
Yeah.
Speak it, right? Speak it into existence. Talk to your friends about it. Say the thing, because when you say the thing, you have to do the thing.
Yeah.
It's not just also saying it to the air and, oh, hey, universe, you done caught, did you catch that? Nah, it's universe plus homies, because accountability equals the glow up, right?
Yeah.
Keeping me and you and y'all accountable is really what gets the work
And checking
done.
in on folks. How's that thing going that you
child.
said you were going to be working on? Do you need some help with that? Like making sure you're accountable to your friends, you know?
Yeah, accountable to your friends, accountable to yourself.
Yeah.
And I would say in terms of you just like sneezing and starting an LLC,
I like this
dude,
language around this.
Everything that I've done for myself or in the name of my thing, company, radio show, whatever, I do it because I want to show my work, right? Before I was allowed in these rooms, I had to show my work, and I did not wait to be allowed into the room. You see how this is my fourth day on the goddamn stage, y'all. I didn't ask for all this. I took it, fam. You know why they trust me? I mean, also, shout out to Werk for inviting me. But you know why Werk trust me, right? Because I have over 1,000 episodes that I have done live shit, right?
Yeah.
Because I have...
She got the work to back it up.
You Google the YouTubes. Google me on the YouTubes, and you can see me doing live speaking, public speaking. You know what I'm saying? People, the work begets work, and sometimes you got to show people your work.
Yep.
Right? So I want to be in audio drama. What I do? Make one. Shit, that's it. Listen, fam, nobody's going to give this to you.
You got to take it.
The most come up that I've gotten was coming up for myself and doing for myself.
Same.
And other people seeing that and being consistent with that. So that's how I do me. And you could just, support me by following the journey and talking me up when I'm not around. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yo,
thanks, y'all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. Thank you, Werk It.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gabby. Thank you, TK. It feels like in this session and in so many of the sessions that I think that we've seen yesterday and today, I feel like this is one of the few events where you see really, really honed ambition alongside a dedication to value-driven work. There's been so many people who dedicated, an entire slide of their thing, who dedicated 2 minutes to their presentation that was 30 minutes long to be able to say, check out her work, and check out her work, and check out her work. And I want to shout out my executive producer whose idea I just mentioned. It's so classy, and that's not often the case. It was really cool. Okay, next. Ricardo, you're killing it. Next, I just want to also mention that if you see something you dig or that you'd like to share with your networks, the hashtag that we're using is WorkItFestival, Work It obviously with an E. There have been as of 11 this morning, 874 mentions just on Twitter, which is almost a potential 6 million impressions. That's some real numbers. I'm now going to welcome the host of Switch, Pivot, or Quit, Yana Angel. She equips her listeners with practical advice and mindset shifts to help them take control of their days. She quit a pretty badass gig as an NBA publicist to make a transition to following her passion in personal development. She also founded Maisie Media, which is a podcast network that creates content curated for women. And as you may know, we already requested a few of you submit some of your career questions and issues via survey, so we'll be handling those on stage. Please help me welcome Ayanna Angel.
All right, I got a little mouth interaction for y'all real quick. Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep. For so many, that's a dreaded sound, right? Raise your hand if you wake up to the sound of an alarm clock every morning. Ah, yes, my people, my people. If you're anything like me and you're not really a morning person, that sound, that's like cringeworthy, right? But that's the sound of determination. That's the sound of dedication. That's the sound of how bad do you really want it. That's the sound that I heard for about 9 months, maybe about 200 mornings when I woke up earlier than a girl would have liked to, before it was time to get ready for work, to work on my very first manuscript, AKA write my very first book. Now, I had managed large-scale red carpets all over the country. I designed a pair of earrings with these very hands right here, worn by Miss Beyonce herself, okay? Yes, thank you, yes, clap for that. We love B, right? But this was finally my time to work on the project that was gonna force me to quit playing small. So I hopped on the 6 train, that sound that morning, I heard it, that alarm sound, and I got up and I walked through Harlem, hopped on the 6 train like J-Lo, headed downtown to the NBA offices on 5th Avenue, walked into a slightly dimly lit conference room, sat my manager down, looked her in the eyes, and let her know that I was gonna be putting in my 2 weeks notice because I had finally decided to quit playing small. That alarm, those mornings, that sacrifice, that decision to quit playing small, that's what's allowed me to be standing here on the stage in front of you and with you all today. So who am I, right? My name is Ayanna Angel, and I'm a former sports entertainment publicist turned traditionally published author who quit my old life to live in London for a little while, to travel throughout the world and have amazing experiences in search of having a life that was more in line with my goals and what I felt was my idea of success. Oh, okay, we're missing a slide, but it's all right. We're gonna keep going. I'm now the host of the personal development podcast, Switch, Pivot, or Quit, and I am the author of the book, as you see up there, Quit Playing Small, and I'm the founder of Maisie Media. And a part of the reason that I created Maisie Media was for some of the conversations, same reason some of the conversations that we were having yesterday about just not seeing yourself in spaces. So I wanted to create a platform for us to be able to share our voices and our stories. So today, what are we gonna talk about? We're gonna get into how to identify if you're playing small, and we're gonna learn to shine. Like our friend says, shining, 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 yeah, right? All of this winning, hey, that's what we're gonna do, right? So, I wanna share one thing with you. Now, this is something that you may not have heard before because people don't readily say this to you. But I feel it on my heart to say this to you and to share this with you. Because no one ever said it to me. I had to say it to myself. So I'm gonna say it to you. You all the way back there too. You can do hard things, girl. Give it up for yourselves, because you can do hard things. So during our time together, with that in mind that you can do hard things, I want to teach you how to shine, and I want to take you through my method that I use to help myself learn how to shine and to get from in the shadows to push myself out into the light so that my voice and my ideas could be seen and could be heard. Now, I want to challenge you to think of one area in your life, one area where you're going to plot your shine, one area where you've maybe been thinking a little small, you maybe been putting it off to the side and thinking maybe I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it later, I don't want to worry about it right now, one day it'll come. That thing, that's the thing that I want you to have in your mind when we're getting ready to put our idea to the shine test. Now, this could be an idea that you've been sitting on. This could be you, whether you've been thinking about vying for a promotion, or whether it's like starting a new business or something like that. You can put any of these through the shine test, so I want you to have that in mind. But you see this young lady here in this picture? How does she look? She looks uncomfortable, right? That's one thing I want to let you know, though. I gotta warn you that in order to shine, you will have to be uncomfortable. You will have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. Just like me standing here on this stage in front of you guys today. I never thought I'd be doing anything like this. This is not super comfortable, okay? But I'm doing it. You know why? Because I'm forcing myself to quit playing small and to shine, right? So I'm expecting to see y'all doing the same thing, whatever it looks like for you, okay? Now, how to identify if you're playing small? Some of you may be thinking, she doesn't know me. How does she know I'm playing small? You might be thinking, I've done some things. I've achieved some things. I've gotten promotions. I've worked on big projects, all these things, right? So no, there's no way you could possibly be playing small, right? Wrong. We all do it. I've done some things too. I've achieved some things too. But guess what? I still have to catch myself playing small. So now we're gonna identify some of the ways that we might be playing small. The first way is approval. If you're constantly finding yourself seeking the approval of your family and friends, worried about what your peers are gonna say, worried about what your colleagues are gonna say, all the things outside of what you know you need to be doing, and you're seeking that approval, that's the easy way to know you playing small. Mistakes. If you're afraid of making mistakes, if you're worried about doing things or taking that next step forward because you think, oh, what happens if I make a mistake? That's how you know you're playing small. Guess what? Mistakes are proof of progress. If you're not making mistakes, you're not living. If you're not making mistakes, you're not doing anything, okay? And I think TK and the ladies, they talked about that as well, right? You have to be making some mistakes and getting some no's and getting out there in order to know that you're moving yourself forward. The drama. Now, let's be honest for a second, okay? I, just like anybody else, like a little drama, right? The People magazines, the Inside editions, the Entertainment Tonights, all of that, right? We want to know what's going on. We like, okay, what happened, right? But we can only partake in a little bit of the drama because what the drama does is it distracts you. When your girlfriend calls you and is like, girl, I got the latest tea. You want to know what happened? That's a distraction from what you really should be doing, from what you really should be working on, the things that you really should be channeling your energy into. Silenced. How many have found themselves in a meeting before, around the table with their colleagues, this brainstorming meeting, or you're supposed to be throwing out ideas, and you have this brilliant idea that crosses through your mind, but you don't raise your hand and you don't speak up and say anything? Raise your hand if you've been in that position before. Yes, most of us have. That's how you know you're playing small. When you don't raise your hand, when you don't speak up, when you don't say, I have this idea, even if you don't think it could go anywhere, even if you think that maybe they're gonna shun it, Playing small is not saying anything. When you quit playing small, you speak up and you say, I have an idea. So when you allow your voice to be silenced, or when you silence your own voice, that's how you know you're playing small. Fault. We all know that person that's never at fault for anything, right? It's never their fault. They didn't do it. It was somebody else's doing that made it happen in the wrong way. If you're never at fault and you're always excusing yourself and you're never accountable, that's how you know you're playing small. Fantasy. And you're probably thinking, where is she going with this? If you're living in a fantasy and you're thinking you're going to mantra your way out, you're going to affirm your way out, you're going to do all the things, right? The universe is just going to magically come into your living room and give you some blessings that you didn't know were coming your way. Wrong. No. You have to be willing to do the work. You have to establish the goals. You have to go out there and not just sit around and hope for good luck, right? And if you're sitting around hoping for good luck and waiting for the universe to work it out, that's how you know you're playing small. So now we're going to get into our shine. We're going to learn how to shine. So the S for shine is should I do it? The H is how would I do it? The I is it innovative for me? The N is there a need for it? E, what are your expectations? Okay? And don't worry, we're going to continue to go through these so you don't have to write them all down. Or yeah, I guess you could take a picture. Should I do it? So this is the time where I want you to have that thing in mind that you've been playing small with, that thing that you've been putting back and pushing off and saying, I don't think I'm qualified. I don't think I should do it. This is when I want you to have that in mind, right? You're going to put that through this test. So for me, it was, should I write this book, right? The thing that I was putting through this shine test was that thing that I decided to get up in the mornings and work on, this book. So when you ask yourself, should I do it? If I quit playing small, would I determine that I should do this, right? This is a time where you want to convince yourself. You maybe even write a pros and cons list. And when you write that pros and cons list, I want you to take a second look at those cons, and I want you to play devil's advocate. Let's say one of your cons is, what if nobody reads this book? Oh, but girl, what if they do? You know what I mean? I want you to really dig in and start being an advocate for yourself and start thinking against the things that is natural to come up in our minds and think negative about ourselves or second guess ourselves or doubt ourselves. This is where I want you to convince yourself that you can do it, that you should do it. This is your opportunity to make a case for your dreams and your ideas. Now, for me, I wanted a career change. So when I'm asking myself, should I do this? Should I write this book? Well, if I wrote this book and I was able to get it traditionally published, which was my goal, that would give me a nice segue into a career change, right? If I wanted a foundation in a new career, that would give me a good foundation in a new career, right? So when I'm asking myself, should I do this? My answer was absolutely. Take a second, ask yourself, should you do it? Jot a few things down. Then we get into how would I do it? This is when we're tapping into our practical side. If I quit playing small, could I think of ways to execute on this idea or project? When we're playing small, we feel like, oh, this is too overwhelming. I want to write a book, but oh my gosh, it's going to take so long. How could I ever do it? When could I ever find the time? No, this is a time where you want to start thinking practical. For me, what did that look like? I had to wake my ass up early in the morning. I don't like getting up early, but the sacrifice was getting up an hour earlier so that I could carve time out of my schedule so that I could actually do it. For you, it might not be writing a book. For you, it might be writing a screenplay. For you, it might be setting up meetings or interviews or doing things on the back end for your new podcast. Whatever it looks like for you, you have to be willing to sacrifice and carve out that time. I also took workshops. I took classes. I did things outside of work, outside of in my free time that I knew would push me forward. So when I'm saying think practical, think of the smaller things that you can do today or tomorrow to push you forward in whatever that goal is or whatever you're looking to do. This is also the time to invest in yourself. If you're thinking, how would I do it, but I don't have the skills yet? Okay, maybe one of your practical things is you go sign up and take that class. Start really writing down some of the easier things that you can do and approachable things that you can do in order to create this loose plan of action so that you can shine, honey. Then you want to ask yourself, is it innovative for me? If I quit playing small, would this be innovative for me? Not for the world, okay? Let's not overwhelm ourselves. We're not talking about innovation for the world. We're talking about innovation for you. Innovation is just introducing new ideas, right? Something original, something creative. If you were to do this thing, if you were to vie for that promotion, if you were to start this project, if you were to start that podcast, would it be innovative for you? For me, writing this book, no one knew me as an author. I was a publicist. So would this be innovative for me? Absolutely. Would it be creative for me? Absolutely. Let me just tell you this. So I wrote this whole book, right? I get this traditional publishing deal. We're going through all the different edits. We get to the point where it's finalized. The book is coming out the next day. And I'm sitting there in my room, and I was thinking, oh my God, I wanted this, but now they're gonna read all my thoughts, all the sex scenes in the book, all the curse words, everything. My mom, my grandmother, my dad. Oh my God, this is horrible. This is horrible. But it was innovative for me, right? Nobody knew that side of me. Nobody knew what I was thinking in this head. Nobody knew that creative side of me. So I want you to challenge yourself and ask yourself, this thing that I'm thinking about, is it innovative for me? Would people be shocked and surprised that I've done this? Then that's how you know, okay, she ready. She gonna stop quit playing small now. She gonna quit playing small. Come on, get it. Is there a need for it? If I quit playing small, would I see the need for this? Sometimes you can't see the need for it because you're so busy playing small and thinking small that you're like, oh, nobody wants that. You're doubting yourself again, you're second guessing, you're questioning whether there's validity to it, whether people would actually be interested. But the need could be internal or external. For me, writing this book, I thought the need was internal. I thought that I needed to do this because this was something that I had been thinking about doing, but just hadn't done yet, right? This was something that was gonna propel me forward in a new career. This was something that was going to help me create a name for myself. This was something that was going to be innovative for me, right? This was something that I thought, if I do this, I could have a legacy. You know, my name would be in print. You can't take that away from somebody. So I was thinking, this is just for me. This is internal. But what I didn't know is that my story in sharing my journey with other people and actually doing this was going to create an external need. And that's a part of the reason that I created the Switch, Pivot, or Quit podcast. As I shared with people that, yes, I quit my job. No, I didn't have a job lined up. No, I didn't have a publishing deal lined up. Yes, I got a publishing deal 4 months later. Yes, my book is gonna be on Walmart and Target store shelves. And yes, I'm now no longer in this position where I dread getting up in the morning and going to work because I can't stand being at this place anymore and being micromanaged. Okay. When I shared that with people, they were inspired. And I found out just how many people didn't feel fulfillment from their journey, from what they were doing day to day. And I was like, oh, this is a thing. While I thought it was just me, it was a thing. And so that's why I created the Switch, Pivot, or Quit podcast, so that women like us could share our stories and we can know that we're not alone and we can see how other people have navigated their journey and take bits and pieces and tools from their journey. So for me, I thought that the need was internal, but the need actually ended up being external. And what I want to encourage you to do is think about how you show up in this world. You may think that this need is internal for you as well, but guess what? You have gifts and talents that this world needs to hear from you. And if you do not share those gifts and talents with this world, if you do not let your ideas come out, if you do not let your voice come out, you are not only doing yourself a disservice, you're doing the world a disservice, because they will never get to experience you and all the amazingness that you have to offer. And I mean that. I'm so serious about that. Thank you. And finally, what are your expectations? If you quit playing small, what would your expectations actually be? If you dreamed your biggest dream, what would your expectations be for this project, this idea, this promotion, this thing that you're thinking about? So for me, a virtually unknown author, no skin in the game, naturally, when I had this book released, I expected to be a New York Times bestselling author. Hey, a girl could dream, right? But I'm just kidding, but I'm not kidding. I didn't make it, but at the same time, because I knew that that was my expectation, I put goals and things in place that would push me further and harder than I had ever pushed myself before. I knew that I wanted to make a big splash with this, so I created a whole 7-city tour by myself, right? I didn't have a publisher pushing me up, because if you're not a celebrity author, then they kind of don't care. So I created all these things myself and created avenues to put myself on the forefront, because my expectations were to do something big with this project. So think about your expectations. You know what you want. You really know what you want. Even if you've never verbalized it to somebody else, you know what you want. You also know what feels good to you, right? You know what you would feel accomplished in having done. You know what you would feel proud of. You know the types of things that you would want to share with other people and say, oh my God, I did this thing, right? So acknowledge that. Acknowledge that, and also ask for what you want. If you have your expectations set, remember, people are not going to give you anything. If you want a certain amount of money from that promotion, ask for what you want. If you want a certain amount of money for executing that project, or if you want producer credentials, whatever it is that you want, ask for what you want. Because if you don't ask for what you want, your expectations won't be met. Now's the time to put your ideas through the shine test. So when you leave here today, you've had 2 days of amazingness, right? I'm sure there's a ton of things floating through your heads, a ton of ideas floating through your heads. I want you to take that big idea, and I want you to put that through the shine test. And I really want you to be serious about it. I want you to sit down and spend some time on it, because this is the time for you to shine. We all have a limited amount of time on this earth. We don't know what that looks like. I don't want you to live with regrets and to be on your last days and think, gosh, what if I would have just tried? No, try now. Try tomorrow. Try tonight. Do whatever you need to do to push your ideas forward. So today we covered how to identify if you're playing small and how to put those ideas through the shine test. Does everybody feel comfortable with the shine test? Do you get it? Give me a hand clap if you get it. All right. Because y'all so quiet in here. Y'all did a couple giggles and whatnot, but I need energy, baby. Now, I want to encourage you to stop hiding your greatness from the world. I want to encourage you to be bold with your decisions. I want to encourage you to tap into the courage to quit playing small. And I want to share this with you. This is something that just kind of came to me during my journey. And I realized your greatest success lives behind your greatest fear. Let that sink in, okay? If you're searching for this success, if there's some things that you've been vying for in your mind but haven't actually put out there in the forefront, you have to be willing to look that fear in the face, say, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it anyway. I don't care what they think. I don't care what they have to say. I'm ready to shine and shine and shine and shine and yeah. You know, you gotta be ready, honey. And I also want you to make quit playing small your silent mantra, okay? So the next time you're sitting in that conference room with all those men and you have that idea and you're intimidated and you feel silenced or you're silencing yourself and you're thinking, I don't want to say it, I want you to think of me. I want you to think of this room full of women right here supporting you. And I want you to remember and tap yourself on the shoulder, not literally, but quit playing small. The next time you're thinking of an idea that you want to share with your girlfriends, but you think, oh, they're going to think it's stupid. Or the next time you want to share with your manager that you want to actually go for this promotion or you want to work on this big project, but you're thinking, oh, no, they're going to say I'm not qualified. I want you to remember, quit playing small. So as you go throughout your life, I want you to adopt this as your mantra because we like those mantras. We can't just depend on them, right? We need more than a mantra. But I want you to remember, quit playing small. Quit playing small, quit playing small, quit playing small. Keep tapping yourself on the shoulder with that and push yourself forward because you got the juice, baby. Okay, so we asked for some questions ahead of time. Some of you may have gotten an email asking you for your career-related questions. So now we're gonna get into those questions. These were questions that I received in advance. We're gonna start with those, and then we're gonna open it up for you to come and ask any questions that you may have. So the first question is, I like my full-time job, but I'd like to quit in the next few years to go independent. How do I work on building a business on the side without feeling dead all the time? That's Hannah C. I would suggest that you set goals. You set goals and you prioritize and you outsource. If you have a full-time job, if you feel like you don't have extra money, figure out where you can cut back, get some extra money on your side so that you can outsource the things that maybe you can't exactly do and you don't have the time for or that might make you feel burnt out. But this is the reality, you guys. When I said I made earrings worn by Beyonce, that's because I had co-created a jewelry line at the same time that I was working my 9 to 5. And I would stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes if we had a new line coming out or we had a photo shoot or we had a delivery that needed to be made. I was tired, okay? This is the reality. If you're chasing your goals, if you're trying to do dual things, you will probably be tired for a period of time. But if you're being smart about it, it may not be a long time. You do what you need to do for the time that you need to do it, you sacrifice and you get it done. If you're worried about being tired and burning yourself out, guess what? Maybe this dual lifestyle and trying to get to that next big thing, it might not be for you. Just might not be. That's just real talk. Okay, our next question is, I don't want to leave the field of education, but I do have other dreams in podcasting and social justice. I've talked to my mentors and done more self-talk than I care to mention now. How do you get past the fear and finally make the leap into the unknown? I say you force yourself to start doing other things that are uncomfortable. What did we talk about before? Me being on this stage is not exactly comfortable for you guys, for me. You guys are all sitting out there staring at me, looking at me, wanting me to perform, do something. I think y'all want me to do like a backflip or a cartwheel or something. I can't, okay? I can't. It's not always comfortable, right? But you have to put yourself in situations that are uncomfortable. Before I quit my job, and let me also just say this, I am not an advocate for quitting your job, okay? I am really not. I am an advocate for doing what you need to do to make yourself happy. I don't know what that looks like. Only you know what that looks like. But before I walked away from my job, one of the things that I did that was completely out of my comfort zone is I took an acting class. Now, mind you, I took all types of classes, flying trapeze class, sewing class, all these classes, because I was trying to figure out what did I like, right? But that acting class made me real uncomfortable. We had to remember some lines. We had to recite it in front of the whole class. And I was like, what did you sign up for? I was really uncomfortable. But that also helped to prepare me for moments like this, where it's uncomfortable. So do things that are pushing you outside of your comfort zone so that you can start to feel that fear and feel what it feels like, and then know that you can get past it and know that you can do more. Absolutely, you're welcome, boo. And then ask yourself if you want to die living with the idea or knowing that you never tried. Do you want to die knowing that you never tried? I don't think so. So if that's not getting over fear enough, I don't know what else to tell you. Push yourself in a way that feels like, guess what? If I don't do this, I could die tomorrow, and I would never have tried it. Try it, girl. Do it. Get out there. Okay, next question is, my resume dates me. Should I take off when I graduated and the dates for when I worked at places and instead focus on what I did and where I worked instead of when I did all that? Yes, you should. Ageism is a real thing. You know, as you get older in the work, when you're young and, hey, I'm coming into the office, I'm feeling good, I'm young, I'm cute, you know, everybody know you young, you cute, you just graduated from school, you know, you feel good, right? You're on top of the world. But then you start popping gray hairs, you start walking into the office with your little stretch pants on or whatever, because you know you picked up a little weight and you're feeling like, oh, you know, I got all the things to do, right? It shows sometimes too. But the whole point is people are looking at you and they're judging you whether you like it or not, right? You come into an interview, they're judging you. You send in a resume that has 86 on it, they judging you. You know what I mean? And it's not fair, but it happens. So you want to set yourself up to be in a position where they're looking at your skill set and they're judging you off of what they think you can bring to the table and what value you offer to the situation versus sitting up there calculating, oh, she graduated in 86, she must be. Don't even give them that opportunity, okay? So yes, I do think you should take your years off. And I don't know what it really looks like to take your years off of the current jobs. I don't know how acceptable that is because I'm not a resume expert per se, but I do think you should take the year off that you graduated for sure. And maybe even try and vet that idea of taking off the years for the jobs. See how that shows up and if it works for you. How much can I do as one person? Can I produce multiple podcasts, one for profit, one non-for-profit? How do you start a podcast network? This is Martha H. Martha, you got all the questions, girl. Okay, so yes, you can produce multiple podcasts. Do I think you should? If you've never produced a podcast before, no. I think you should be good at one thing first. Maybe it's a situation where one podcast builds on the other. Maybe the non-for-profit podcast can come first, and then that gives you a nice foundation and a set of people who you have their attention now because of maybe what you're doing and it's so community-focused or what have you. And then you're able to do the for-profit after because now you've created this base and you can make one build off of the other. I don't exactly know what these podcast ideas are, but I do think that it is important to focus on one first, especially if you're doing other things as well, so that you can be known for something. Nobody likes to be put in a box, but the reality is people need to put us in a box in order to consume us and in order to understand us. People need to know where you fit, where you show up. So if you can go ahead and master something, then you'll be better suited to move on to the next thing and make that a success as well. In terms of starting a podcast network, there are so many things that are considered a podcast network. All the networks look different. I think the thing that you should mainly focus on and worry about when you're thinking of, should I start one, is what's the through line? Is there a through line for you starting this podcast network? And what's the mission? Why are you doing it? It's really gathering a collective of shows together, and does that make sense for you? Is there a need? Go back to need, right? Is there a need for it? That's what I would say. So those are my answers to the questions that were submitted. If anybody else has questions, come on down. Let's go. Questions? No? Oh, you coming? Okay. Girl, look at you all cute and shining. Shining, yeah. Hey.
Thank you. I actually never wear anything like this, so your talk kind of aligns with like where I'm going.
Yes!
So thank you. I appreciate
give it up. I love it. Being bold.
Thank you. So my question is mostly, I've gone through a lot in my life where it's given me the internal monologue that I'm not enough.
Oh.
And so I'm wondering, is there any advice that you can give to people who feel like they don't have enough creative spirit?
Enough creative spirit. Mm-hmm. That one, that makes me sad.
Yeah.
Who's to tell you that you don't have creative spirit? This is your narrative, right? Okay, so get out there and start creating. Get out there and start putting yourself in some situations to create. Like we said, even if it's uncomfortable, start taking some classes. Maybe it's an art class, a painting class, a creative writing class, something that's gonna force you to have created something at the end of that, right? So it'll just show you that you can go through the process of creation. I think sometimes it's a confidence thing too. So start doing some things that can help you boost your confidence, right? Start putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations and really showing up. And I think knowledge really helps us when we're not very confident. So if there's certain areas that you know you want to be excellent in or that you want to show up bigger in, start beefing up your knowledge in those areas. Start reading books. Start listening to podcasts about those areas and spaces. Start taking informational meetings so that you have a wealth of knowledge. So when it comes down to it, even when you try to question yourself, you can't. It goes nowhere. Because now, you know, you're like, I got this. I know. You know what I mean? And you can just rattle off stuff, and then your confidence will continually increase. And then with that, your creativity will increase because now you have confidence about your creativity and about your whole entire self.
Okay, so you're pretty much telling me to shine through the self-doubt.
Yes,
that's pretty much okay.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
And wear that shirt every day.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, how
Hi.
are you? Hi, my name is Nara.
Hi, Nara.
I hope my question's not too similar to her question, but
Sure.
the past 2 days, I have been so inspired by so many people, and I have been surrounded with so much female excellence that I don't know where to start, and I find that I frequently become overwhelmed with like, what do I do next? How do I get to the next step? So do you have any advice on pacing, like how to get yourself like, continually working so you don't burn yourself out? I frequently burn myself out and work too hard, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just did too much, so.
Yeah, well, we all know you have to take it one step at a time, right? We've all heard that before. But what does that look like for you? Let's stop generalizing stuff because I'm a problem solver. What do you want to do?
I've had 2 podcasts already. I had a podcast with a coworker of mine, and I'm not sure if it's going to continue, so I think I want to start my own now.
Okay.
But since I've had 2 fail, I feel like I put too much into it without slowing myself down.
Who said they failed?
Myself, I guess. Yeah, myself. I mean, I'm glad that I did them.
Yeah.
You know, I put them on Spotify, so they're always going to be there as pieces of work. But I'm not sure how to start over, I guess.
I would caution you to never say that they failed again.
Okay.
Okay, because you tried, you put it out there. And in this world of podcasting, one of the things that people don't talk about is the numbers, right? People don't tell you how many downloads they get. They don't tell you how much revenue they're making off their podcast. So sometimes things look all shiny and pretty and great, right? But if you were getting like, let's say 150, 160 downloads per episode, you were winning, you were average. Right? Okay. You're right there with everybody else. People will have you thinking that in order to be winning in podcasting, you have to be getting thousands of downloads and that your peers are getting thousands of downloads, but they're probably not. Money is based on a CPM, right? If you're going to make money from a podcast, and that's cost per thousand, right? Most people are not getting thousands of downloads to be making tons of dollars from their podcast. So when you say that your podcast is a failure, is it because you think you weren't having the kind of listenership that you thought you should be having?
No, more so because me and my co-host kind of broke apart.
Oh, girl, please, that's life.
Okay.
That's not a failure.
Okay.
She just wasn't the one for you. You weren't the one for her.
Okay.
Y'all didn't judge together. It's okay. You won't judge with everybody. You don't have to judge with everybody. So now you just take your judge on and do your own thing by yourself.
Perfect.
And you will be winning with it, okay? And when it comes to all the information that you've gathered here today and trying to figure out, okay, how can I not be overwhelmed with doing this thing on my own? I say, take all of this as inspiration and as that fuel to that fire, but look at what you've already done. Go back to your notes of how you guys started that podcast and start just recreating that same process. What did you guys do to launch it? What did you do to market it? How did you record your shows? All those things, just don't try and recreate the wheel. Just get into what you've already done and make it work for you without boo, okay?
Thank you.
There you go. You're welcome. Hi.
I think I struggle because I really want to shine in that particular area, but I just like so many things. And I feel like I'm like, oh, I want to start a podcast. And then the next week I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to be a documentary filmmaker. and then next week I'm like, wait, I could be a doctor. And so it's like, how do I, and I know there's like so many resources out there, and I could like focus my effort. If I could just focus my efforts in one area, I could like become an expert in that area.
Yeah.
But I just don't know what that area is yet. So like, how would you suggest finding where that is?
I think you need to start getting strict with yourself. Start having some discipline. If you think that you want to start a podcast, let's say, work on it. Do it. And when you start thinking, oh, I want to be a documentary filmmaker, that sounds great, I should do that. No. No, say no. Tell yourself like I do, sit down somewhere, have several seats. You're working on this podcast, get this podcast together, get it to where you need it to be. Figure out if it's viable for you. Figure out if it can work before you start entertaining other ideas. Mm-hmm. Shut yourself down. You know what I mean? Yes, we want to shine, but we also have to know when to shut ourselves down too and say, slow down. Because if you're never focusing on one thing and you're never allowing yourself to see something through, you don't really know what you're capable of. You don't really know what it could be. You're doing yourself a disservice because you're cutting it off before you actually hit that finish line or before you achieve some kind of success with it, some type of something that you get back that shows you, oh, okay, this is actually working or this is actually good. You know, you have to give yourself a chance, right? And if you don't give yourself a chance to see something through, you don't know what the possibilities could be. So really sit down, take some of those ideas, put them through the shine test, and see which one makes the most sense for you or which one feels the best. And you're young, I know you are, you young and cute and everything, and you like, oh yeah, girl, I want to do this, I want to. You have a lot of time. You have time to do a couple things or try a thing over here. If it doesn't work, try a thing over there, try a thing over there. You have time. Just remember that you have that time and be more disciplined with yourself. Like, really be disciplined with yourself. And if you need somebody to hold you accountable, that friend that when you have this new idea, that friend that'll tell you, sit down, you're doing too much, focus on the podcast, find that friend. Because sometimes you do need somebody outside that will kind of help center you again.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hello.
Hi, Anna. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Thank you for doing this. So let's say you start shining, and then people start noticing, and then you're like, shit, I have to keep showing up, shining. How do you keep showing up, sparkling and shining consistently? Because once you start something, it keeps growing, right? And then how do you also manage when that shining then puts you in rooms that you're not used to being in, and meeting people that are just so outside what you're used to?
I think you have to think back to what do you really want when it comes to being in those rooms, you know? I could have said no to this opportunity because it felt a little scary, right? But what do I really want? I want everybody to know about Maisie Media. I want everybody to be able to tell their stories and for them to be heard. I want to be inspiration for people. I want to encourage people. I want to be your biggest cheerleader. So if I say no, then I won't have the opportunity to do that. Remember, what do you really want? If what you want is in that room, you just got to suck it up and put yourself in that room. Put your big girl panties on and get in the room, girl. And when it comes to your shine, and if you feel like, oh, I'm shining too much.
Oh, not that.
You know,
okay, it's not
shine
that.
is just blinding, you know?
No.
Then I think that you got to ask yourself according to who and why. You know, why does it feel? Because I do think that could be like a confidence thing.
Okay.
In the sense that if you really want to shine, like, you're not gonna shy away from the things that continue to make you shine. You're gonna, even if it feels scary, you're gonna step toward those things because you know that that's what you want. But if you're shying away from it, I think it might be worth evaluating, like, is this really what I wanted? Is this in line with my person and who I am? You know, because I keep saying to you guys that it's scary to be up here and all of that, or it's intimidating, but I'm a big personality, in case you hadn't noticed. I got a big mouth. I love to talk. That's one of the reasons that podcasting works for me. So, you know, like, yeah, I may have been nervous when I first walked out here, but I'm not now. You know why? Because this is me. This is my element. This is what I need to be doing. It's in line with me. So I think if something is in line with you and what feels right for you and makes sense for you, you won't be intimidated by the shine or scared by the shine. Okay. But don't do things because you think it's what you need to be doing. Do things because that's what you actually want to be doing, or that's what you feel in your soul, like this is where I need to be, this is where I need to show up. Okay. That's why I think it would make the difference.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Damona Hoffman from the Dates and Mates podcast.
Hi.
And I've had a lot of opportunities and a lot of opportunities that didn't go quite the way I expected. A couple of TV shows that only lasted one season, and
but you had a TV show.
I had a TV show.
But it only lasted one season.
And only lasted one season.
Okay.
So I want to know about like the expectation hangover of like when you launched your book and it wasn't a bestseller. How do you recover from that? How do you iterate and continue to go out there and keep shining if it doesn't always go the way that it was supposed to go in your head?
Well, see, this is the thing. We got to get over the way it was supposed to go because it never does go that way, right? If you want something bad enough or you believe in something bad enough and you believe in yourself enough, you just keep going. I don't look back and dwell on that stuff. I said that to y'all today here about it not being a New York Times bestseller, but I came up with that when I wrote these notes. That's not something I really dwelled on and I really thought about. I was on to the next thing. You gotta keep moving and keep going. It's okay to have reflection, to understand where you've been and where you've come from, but you can't dwell on the things that didn't work out. I think if it didn't work out a certain way, it didn't work out for a reason. If my book had automatically become a New York Times bestseller, would I have been ready for that? Probably not. Would I have known what to do with that? Probably not. But when my next book comes out and it's a New York Times bestseller, will I know what to do with that? Abso-freaking-lutely. You know? So just give yourself time to kind of like go through the paces of these things in that journey and what that looks like. Everything is not gonna always work out the way that you expect that it will, but also think about it ahead of time, even before that show comes out, right? And it doesn't do as well as you think as well as you think it should, right? Before it even comes out, what are my expectations for it? Okay, and if that doesn't happen, what does that mean to me? Nothing. You know why? Because I have done a major thing and a great thing by getting to this place. This place may only exist to get me to that next place. Take it how it is and don't put all this extras on it. Who's to say that you're supposed to be this amazing first time out the gate, new show, wonder, and Hollywood Reporter's talking about her and everything? There's nobody that's been you before you, right? So you have to run your own race. You have to realize you're not comparing yourself, or you shouldn't be comparing yourself with anybody else, because you are where you need to be. Okay?
Thank you.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, you guys, that's my time. The clock is at 0. Oh, we didn't even get to, there it is. We should have been on this the whole time, because what I want y'all to do is follow Maisie Media. I want you to follow me on Instagram at Switch, Pivot, or Quit, and I want you to head to maisiemedia.com and check it out. And of course, I want y'all to get the Quit Playing Small book on Amazon. It's a book for your daily routine, your morning routine, if you have one. If you don't have one, go get yourself one, boo. All right, y'all, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ayana. Okay, housekeeping. Real quick, here's what we're doing. We're heading to lunch. You already know that. You know where the best spots are because you looked at your program yesterday. If you didn't, it's on the back panel, upper right-hand quadrant. Guisados tacos is still really good. If you signed up for one of the mentor meetup spaces, if you signed up for one of the one-on-one sessions with Ask an Engineer, that starts at 1 p.m. in the Walker/Eisen room on the second floor of the Ace Hotel. The space below this theater is available if you want to continue a conversation. We're going to start here again at 2. Also on the main stage at 2, on the second stage at 2, if you're interested, the 70 Million podcast will be talking about criminal justice reform and how they put together their episodes. I can see you wanting to leave so bad. Goodbye. See you at 2.